This is Parashar Patel, Chair of the Finance Committee, on March 28th. Don, if you can just mute yourself for a minute, that would be good. It's 7:01. And since we have a hybrid meeting, I'm going to ask Dee to call the roll.
Okay, Suresh.
Present.
Peggy Briggs.
Here.
Kathy Kuklo. I thought Kathy was here.
She's here.
She is here.
Yeah.
All right, she just walked out. Okay. Eric.
Yeah.
John Garofalo. No. Okay. Greg Guerriello. He's going to arrive late. Amrith, no. Don Kupka.
Online.
Okay. Lindsay Liss.
Here.
Dee Ortner, present. Parashar Patel.
Here.
Carlin Reed is not here. Carlin Reed, okay, that's a no. And Chris Reynolds.
Here.
Quasi Sedruzaman, no. Lois Wassoff?
Here.
Okay, thank you, remote. All right,
That's it?
Yep.
We have a quorum.
we have a quorum.
Anthony, can we pull up our meeting packet? Let's just go through the articles.
Captain's here, so let's read.
Okay, first up is Article 7. I don't think we have to discuss that today, right?
No, we're not gonna be ready right now, so, but we probably will have some line item adjustments.
All right, Article 14, use of free cash. Shall we, Anthony, you want to give us a picture of how much cash we have free?
Sure, so, let me just grab it right here. So I put
And
together-
I'm sorry, did you say Terry Ackerman was on also?
Terry is in the waiting room, yes.
Oh, can we just make her panelists, because we may or may not have questions? Okay, all set?
Yeah. So I put this little chart together for the finance committee, just to, with our estimate of free cash at $8.5 million, and then with the warrant articles that would be using a portion of free cash, that brings the net free cash down to little greater than $7 million. Now, you reserve policy, I used the FY '24 net spending plan of 131, 625, 615. So that would mean you're at 5%, your policy recommends having 6.5, a little greater than $6.5 million at 5, and at 10%, it's $13 million. Also put together a few other charts, and I broke it down on million, and I went down by $250,000 increments to show what the effect would be on this chart right here, on say a house that's assessed at $1,050,000. If you put $1 million to reduce the tax levy, that's $126 a year.
So where should we be following this? I'm sorry, I'm looking.
This is, I'll see if I can highlight this line right here. See right there? I can try to make this.
$115, right?
Yeah.
If you do away with the bookmarks on the left-hand side, we ought to be able to see it a little better. Okay, so the 115 is what we're talking about.
For the median?
Try to make it bigger.
No,
for at a million.
For a million,
House that's assessed,
At $1
Per
million.
million.
yeah.
You were using that as a proxy.
right.
Could you repeat the
Where-
number again,
And
please?
is the median, what, $1.4 million, Anthony?
I
Somewhere around
believe
there?
it was $1.4 million that
Yeah,
was used.
so
as
if you
the-
look down the table,
You
Peggy,
barely
you can-
got there on this table.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, right. It's about $180 to them.
And then there's three other sheets that would break it down at 750, 500, and 250,000, if you were to reduce it.
So the other way that Parashar, do you want me to talk about what I did? Does that help?
Yeah, we're open for discussion right now.
Okay.
So the question on the table, I think, is, do we keep it at 1 million? Do we reduce it? Do we get rid of it? There are lots of sort of viewpoints expressed over the last,
I'm promoting Greg. Greg's
Sorry?
here. Greg's
Yeah.
here. I'm promoting Greg.
lots of viewpoints over the last 6 to 8 weeks. So go right ahead.
Yeah,
We'll have
so,
a bit of a
so I'm a
discussion.
fan of reducing it. So the question for me is, because I don't think we can afford to keep doing it, and I don't think it's a good practice given where we are in terms of the low level of free cash. But, so I looked at it the way historically FinCom has looked at that $1 million offset, which is through the guideline model. So in the guideline model, if you remember, it sort of shows you, here's the impact on the levy, here's the impact to the median tax bill, right? And then we kind of play around with it. That's the thing I'm talking about. So using that model, if you took the full million off, which is, just what Anthony was taking us through in his schedule, the tax impact would be approximately 3.7%. So take it, if you have the full million, the way we already assume it. So if you look at if the budgets came in per our guideline and you had the million, it would be 3.7% increase to the median tax bill. So that's sort of doing nothing. That's where we are right now. If you took that million away, that increase goes to 4.59%. So it jumps a fair amount,
4.59,
5.9.
okay,
right?
thank you.
If you take 250,000 off, it's 4.39. If you take, $500,000 off, it's 409. If you take 750, so as you go down, so if you actually just had, $250,000 less use of free cash, you'd be at 3.9. So I was sort of playing around with, how do we stay around 4%? So at $500,000, it's 4.09. If you use 250, it's 3.9. Anyway, so that's sort of a way to think about it, the way we traditionally have done. And, and that's without any other increase, right? So that's just the guidelines impact on the percentage tax increase. It's not excluded debt, and it's not the fixed costs. I don't think those numbers are that big, though, on top, but it would be nice to look at that. But you're probably, if you lose the million, you're somewhere between 4% and 5% increase in taxes to the median bill. That's where we'd be.
Can I ask a question, Anthony? When we put together the warrant article and we have the excluded debt, are we showing, are we including in there the borrowing we're going to do in fiscal year '25, the cost of that, or is that not yet reflected in the numbers that are in here?
It's not yet reflected, but the first year would be really low, because it would just be the interest, and depending on if we ban it or not, so I don't expect it to be significant, like the big hit when we first borrowed, but no.
So when will that big hit come?
It would probably come for the fourth quarter bill,
In '26?
26, I think you said.
26, or the third quarter bill in yes, in
In
26.
fiscal '26, and that's when they're
Fiscal
going to
year
use, they're
26,
going to
that's
use the
next year
reserve.
now.
Yeah, but they're going to use the reserve, right?
Yeah,
So
no, I understand. I'm
yeah.
just trying to understand.
Yeah.
the input. So, other thoughts and opinions about what to do with the free cash?
How much of an increase do we think the middle years of the debt is gonna push our taxes?
So they borrowed about half. So they borrowed about half, so they have another half to go, right?
So,
Yeah.
Over $1,000.
But it should be somewhat softened by that reserve, right?
Yes.
Yeah. It'll be a big hit, though. It'll be noticeable,
When it hits, sure.
yeah. And in '26, you'll have, if it passes, the stormwater reserve, right? So there'll be 250 thereabouts on
this
top of
this
that.
past tax bill was a pretty big jump.
It was.
Well, that was partly because of the
Right.
reassessment.
Yeah, the assessments, valuations went up.
Well,
We
though,
got more
that
to bill
also,
than others.
that does come into play a couple years from now, because the assessments will be in 2024.
Right. But that's a reallocation between
That's right.
properties
Yeah,
generally,
yeah.
not overall pool, which is kind of what we look at.
Let me go to the phone. Lois, Don, Greg, any thoughts about what to do with the free cash article? I have one idea, but I want to hear from others.
Don's got his hand up, so.
Say that again?
Don?
Yeah, hi, I guess
Okay.
I can just speak. So Anthony, I didn't catch that table that you showed in the beginning, but it looked as though, what I think I saw was that our free cash is gonna be about $7 million. Is that right?
The net, yes, Dawn, I can bring it up again.
Is, so $7 million,
That would be
oh,
the
that,
net.
and that would be inclusive of Article 14, I see. And at that level, we're just over the minimum, are we not?
That's correct.
The minimum is 6.5. So I would say, so the midpoint of the range for free cash is closer to $10 million. And so I really don't think we want to be running at the minimum on free cash. That'd be my, I not to minimize the point you're making, Chris, which is a good one, which is how much the taxes are going up. I think that we should, I think it'd be prudent for us to keep a healthy balance as we're heading into worse situations ahead. As we were just discussing the additional tax bill coming for the middle school, and the taxpayers the following year having to absorb potentially the impact of a $50 million borrowing in their water bill. I think that it's looking as if fiscal 2026 will be worse than 25.
Yeah.
Peggy and then Dee and then Chris.
So, I'm, Don, I'm sort of with you. If I understand it correctly, if we keep the million from free cash going to support tax rate, then it's 3.26?
No, it's about 3.69. 3.26
Okay.
was the increase in the schools and the towns, but we had capital on top of that. So it's closer to 3.7, somewhere around there.
Okay, and then if we add the $1 million, if we take away the million, it's 4.59?
Yeah.
So it's less than 1%.
Yes.
It is less than 1%.
Yes,
Sure.
it is.
Technically,
Technically.
I think we should put free cash at 0. And I'm concerned, looking forward, about when the budget won't hit the 2.5%. Prop 2.5, which we see on the horizon, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So if we don't support it and we have more free cash, when we deliver that free cash later, that will help us avoid a Prop 2.5 override for operations. I think we should save the money now.
Good point.
Dee?
Along that line, I have a question for Anthony about what is the impact on our rating, our bond rating, if we don't, what is our impact?
Yeah, that's a
in the
great
future.
question, because one of the things that we were looking at in the finance office today is what the town has in your general stabilization. And that's a little bit greater than $4,000. So the most of your stabilization is really within free cash. So drawing that low could negatively have effect on our bond rating, which means you're gonna be paying higher in interest. So
Yeah.
leaving it is certainly, we're going out to borrow. So, not using the $1 million is certainly gonna help us to show the bond rating agencies that have a healthy, we didn't use all our free cash, and we're building it up, and we're planning for these projects that you all know is coming down the pike, with all these tier 3, between the roads, public safety, public works. So, personally, if you ask my opinion, I think that what Peggy's saying is the right thing to do. Although I recognize that Concordians pay a lot in real estate taxes, I think it would really be fiscally prudent to
Right.
prepare for the future, especially with, I was reading an article today in the State House News Service about, you know, how the migrant crisis is really affecting the state. And I think the biggest impact is really gonna come in FY '26, which, you know, I think setting ourselves up to weather that storm, and have something in the tank would be the wise thing to do, in my opinion. But
All
it's your
right,
decision.
so we've got a couple folks on Zoom. Terry, before you go, I want to hear from Greg and Lois, and then we'll hear from Terry.
Well, I didn't give you my opinion.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
I
Go
had
right
just
ahead.
asked the question. My opinion is I would zero it out.
Okay. Greg?
One comment is, and I know since I've been on the FinCom, and Chris, probably as long as you can remember, we've done this, you know, sort of every year, right? Where the levels were more toward the higher end. Would we expect next year to revisit this? Probably not, right? Because we're saying that we're getting down into the trenches there of having to pay some stuff. So it feels like if we just go right down to zero, you know, we're ripping it more out for the taxpayers. And I'll lean with Chris here. You know, having it right around 4%. Chris, I forget the exact number. Like that would put in, you know, use of free cash. What was it, like 350, 400, somewhere in there?
Yep.
You know, might be a good thing for this year, and then, you know, next year, you know, we can sort of turn it off and be like, hey, we're really not going to do this. Like, set some bar. Like, we are not going to do this if the percentage is below 6. I'm just throwing out a number, 6.5%. Right? We're not going to even negotiate, you know, talk about it. So we wouldn't be in this situation next year.
Thanks. Lois?
Yeah, I basically am in agreement with what Greg said and several others have said. This has for a long time been a Band-Aid, and I think it's time to rip it off. And the question is whether we do it all at once or we do it a little more gradually. But we are not going to go back to the days where the town was carrying 10% free cash. That's just not in the future. There are too many needs, and there's, we have a different team running things now, and I think they may be more precise in how they manage finances than some past administrations. I think we have to cope with the reality that we're going to be running free cash toward the end of that acceptable range. And it can't be a piggy bank to soften the issues with real estate taxes, as appealing as that may be. So if the consensus of the committee is to use a lower amount this year and do as Greg suggested, and in anticipation that we will not be doing this in future years unless through some great surprise free cash is at the top end of the range, I could live with that. If the consensus of the committee is to not do it at all this year, I could live with that too.
Okay. Terry, why don't you go ahead, and then I'll throw out an idea. Terry?
Okay, thank you. By the way, the video is not working for us online, only the sound. So I'm on the select board, but I'm speaking for myself. Here we
It was
go.
working earlier. Go ahead. We're on it. Go ahead.
All right, whatever. So I'm speaking for myself. Yes, the only question is whether to wean off gradually or go cold turkey. So I'm personally in favor of weaning off gradually, and we could do it over a period of 2 or 3 or more years, just because the taxpayers have been feeling a lot of increases. I just want to add one comment about when I was on the Finance Committee, which was, about 10 years ago. And at that
When we
point.
had money.
Sorry?
When we had money.
Right. However, we only used 1 million a year of free cash, not more. And what's happening in the last few years, we've been using 1 million on the operating, like this year the proposal was 1 million plus 350,000 for the 250th, plus there's a couple other things in there. Well, that is really unsustainable. So I'd be in favor of trying to at least get down to only 1 million this year, and then go down, to 500,000 next year, and then 0 the year after, something like that. But that's one reason we're using it up. We never used more than 1 million until the last 2 or 3 years.
Okay,
So I just point that out.
Kathy, go ahead, and then I'm gonna throw out an idea that might be crazy.
Well, my opinion is that we've had some substantial increases due to the restructuring of the assessments. I think that we should go forward by getting rid of the million and keeping free cash at a reasonable balance.
Okay. So I'm gonna put out an idea, you guys call me crazy or not. Is there a way we can put it forward to a vote at town meeting? And actually let the taxpayers decide whether they want to get the million back or basically carry a little bit less risk moving forward and not use it to pay down the taxes. No, we don't need a special town meeting.
No, but aren't we going to have one?
Well,
We're not?
So is there a way to,
Well, it's the free cash articles on it.
no, I know, but so I guess the question is, we move the free cash article, and I'm presuming we could say, hey, the
You say-
committee wants the input of, and we put up some pros and we put up some cons, and then let town meeting decide, do we want 1 million back, 500,000?
What?
Sure, we do that every year.
Well, we don't explicitly do it because we
half the
put it
time-
forward and we just say, this is what we recommend.
Exactly, but technically, we do that.
I understand that, but what
Yeah.
I'm saying is prompt a discussion,
I-
because this is an ideal sort of place to actually have people vote with their priorities. What do they favor?
My only concern is that in order to explain it properly, it's going to take
Yeah, a
10,
long
15
time.
minutes, and
I-
then you're
I-
going to have a discussion, and I just think that if I were the taxpayer who's sitting there, and they said, you want 1 million? I'd say, yeah, 1 million, of
Yeah,
course.
I think most people won't understand.
Sorry?
They won't understand
It's
the
a
back.
long-term.
It's our job, but
I
we,
think
we
they're-
I think we make it complicated.
Right. No, I think it's our job. I
we
think
still
that's
have to
why we're here.
recommend. So, Maybe-
Parashar, I don't like your idea.
You don't trust that?
There is a warrant
This is simple.
article
Do you want to
before
lower
us.
everybody's taxes by
We
a
are
total of
being
1 million or
asked,
not?
no, I know you were throwing
It
it out
goes
for
in a piggy bank
discussion,
or it
so I'm
doesn't.
discussing it.
It's not that
I don't like
complicated.
the idea. There is a warrant article before us, we
But
have to make a
lowering
decision
it
as a
is still,
committee.
it's our job.
but they're still paying taxes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sleight of hand.
Well, they're still paying, no, they're gonna pay less taxes.
Well,
You
they
just
already
heard.
paid us this, we're just giving it
I-
back.
Yeah, but they already paid
understand
this
that
money,
bit.
it's their
They're
money.
not gonna pay less.
No, I
Okay,
think
okay,
Peggy
hold
is
on.
right
Let's
that,
go
Peggy is
back to
right that we
organized
need a
conversation.
recommendation.
Lois, and then Don, and then people in the room, and it sounds like this is a terrible idea, so I'm just gonna, we're just gonna move on.
Okay, good, let's move on.
Lois, unless you wanna say it's a good idea, we're gonna move on.
And then I'm going to put my hand down.
Don? Don goes away too. Greg?
Your idea is out there, it's floating. If we support this article, anybody can amend it to go lower. So your idea is floating out already, so.
No, it would be, okay, so go lower, but I think what we're talking about is basically going down to 0.
Yes.
That's for us right now, yes. Yep.
Well, so maybe maybe we actually do what we said earlier, is do we want to put it forward, basically, and then say we recommend this be 0? And have that discussion at ATM? Because if you say we don't support it, it's going to get pulled, right?
We should pull what we want as a max.
It's our article.
I know, that's what I'm
It's our
saying.
article. We can withdraw it.
So if we withdraw it now, we're not even giving,
If we don't support
I
the
don't want that.
article,
I think we either do it or we don't do it. I think
you don't
we,
want a discussion at town meeting.
no, I don't want that.
No,
The people around the room.
well, it's
do
not that I think it's okay to have a discussion at town meeting, but this is kind of our article, you know? And I think we should make a decision about it and make a recommendation to either not move it
Yep,
or to move it at a lower amount, which we have the ability to do.
yep.
But we can't duck our responsibility. We have to
Okay.
deal with this.
Got it.
We
So-
have to,
Okay, so Don, hold on, Don, and then I'm gonna entertain a motion after Don. So Don, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that because we're already using 350 for security at the Concord 250, there really is no opportunity here to not use any free cash. And so I would certainly urge us to not move Article 14. Because, and also wanted to say, just sort of in my head, I think unless we had at least 7-8% at a minimum threshold, we shouldn't be spending out of that reserve. So that's my 2 cents on it. First off, even at a reduced level, we're still spending 350, so we're already reduced at 0. That's my point. Thanks.
Okay. So can I get a motion?
Couple quick ones. One for Anthony. What do we expect the rate for the borrowing would be for the rest of the 50 million for the middle school? About the 4, for the same thing what the assumptions were, or it's gonna be higher?
Yeah, you know, I think that we're kind of thinking on the 4, but, you know, there's another community had a favorable with the AAA bond rating. They actually got a pretty good rate at 2.26 for something, but you know, that's not us, but,
Yeah.
you know, again, reducing it, if, you know, if that was, our free cash is down and our bond rating gets hit,
Yeah.
then, you know, you're gonna end up paying a
Yes,
higher interest
yes,
on that borrowing
yeah.
for the debt exclusion, so, well, residents, of course, you know, I'd vote too to reduce my taxes, but they don't really understand the impact, because if we
Yeah.
lose our AAA bond rating, you're gonna be paying more on that
Right.
debt exclusion, it's gonna
Right.
be added on. I just wanna put it out there, I don't want to say, we didn't tell you.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And the second part of that one would be, because hopefully, if we have not too many changes at the middle school, the debt limit will go down in the future years, because if, so far they've done very well, there haven't been any, you know, bigger financial impact, but again, the site work hasn't started, so that's when we do the fields, but what do we find in the soils, and we take the building down, those are like always the unknowns.
Right.
But the question is, if we don't find any big, out of, you know, unsurmountable unknowns, then there will be more money or less money borrowing,
Less money borrowing,
which will help for the future or the other projects. So I think if we are judicious now and keep them, you know, down to 0, I think it'll be better off, because for future years, we can have much better planning then.
Okay, hold on. Eric, did you have a question before?
I just quickly, I mean, it's obviously tough because there's 2 competing priorities here, but I would support sunsetting this under the circumstances. I do think, and this isn't, certainly not for tonight, it's worthwhile trying to hone in on a target for that free cash percentage, because we're operating, it's 5 to 10%. Some people want to go high, some people want to go low. Just as a matter of practice, what number specifically should we be shooting for
Sounds
going
like a good
forward?
idea.
You know, we had talked early on when I first started about looking at our policies, and one of the policies that we should look at is stabilization. And, you know, in my opinion, if we started creeping up near the 10% on free cash, then I think it might be a good idea for town to consider putting some of that money into a capital stabilization fund, or a debt stabilization fund, you know, something that's gonna impact the taxpayers, because we do have all these projects. So, you know, if we save for the future, you know, it's less that is gonna come out of your pockets down the road. So that's, I think, one thing that we probably could improve on is planning, better planning for the future.
And you're more able to gain a higher interest rate on a stabilization fund, is that correct?
Yeah, certainly, you know, we saw it with the middle school stabilization fund, we have a pretty good rate of return right now on that. So.
You
we're
can
able-
invest it long-term.
Yeah, we can invest it longer
That's
term,
the difference, yeah.
Right, especially if these projects are out there in the out years.
All right,
Okay.
can I get a motion now? I think we've,
So I move that we vote affirmative action on free cash for up to $438,586, which is the total of Article 12, Article 13, and Article 52, and that's it.
you took action on those.
We already did.
No.
that.
We
already did
This
that.
is just the million
This
that we
is the, it
use.
was only
We're just
14.
only talking
Yeah,
about
just the
million.
million that we use,
Okay,
yeah.
I
So
move that we allocate
Withdraw.
zero of free cash.
you want to
to
withdraw the
town.
article?
Do we withdraw it?
Withdraw the article?
Is it our article? Are we,
Yes,
can we
yes.
not move the article?
Yes, we
Or
can.
We can withdraw it.
are we just recommending no action on the article?
Well,
Well,
if
this
it's our
is, so if you do no, if you recommend no action, you're gonna have the debate that you want, that I want, but nobody else wants.
So we're the sponsor.
We're the sponsor. I think you
shall-
don't move it.
Withdraw the article?
Then we can withdraw the article.
Yeah.
So can I get a motion?
I
then?
make a motion to withdraw Article 14.
Second.
Okay, can we get a roll call? Oh, wait, do we have any discussion? People had talked about giving something back or not. This is to fully tear off the Band-Aid.
Yep, I'm okay with it. I think, Peggy, you make a good argument that we know we have worse years ahead, and I think it's prudent to put as much away as we can, even though, you know, the taxes are gonna come out higher than I would like, but I think it's prudent. So I would say yes, I agree with that.
Any other, Greg?
Yeah, I just wanted to get one clarification. I think Peggy, you just said the number. We're using about $460,000 worth of free cash elsewhere. Is that a correct statement? Like in
That
other
is
articles?
correct, actually. For the other articles that we've already voted on, the use of the free cash is 438,000.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments, concerns? So can I get a roll call? So it seems like the discussion is over.
All right. Suresh,
I,
Peggy,
Aye.
Kathy,
Aye.
Eric,
Aye.
Greg,
No.
Don,
Aye.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Dee, aye. Parashar,
No.
Christine,
Yes,
Lois.
Yes.
Okay, 2 noes and the rest are yeses. It passes.
So just one requesty, because I
Yeah.
think this is important enough. Well, we're gonna have it in the back with the table, but, right,
Okay.
right, the fact we withdrew it.
Yeah,
Can we add a sentence or two up front where you've got your trends in the report? Because I think this is a
a
sign.
handout at the
No, no,
at
in
ATM
our
if you
report,
want.
No, what I'm saying is in
Oh,
our report.
Okay, but at the meeting, you can have
No,
handouts.
the meeting,
yeah.
I'm talking about the
Yeah.
report. Just mention a sentence or two that the committee thought it was important enough to not do this after many years.
Yeah.
Because again, you want to,
Well,
I think in
I thought you
addition,
were
the
gonna-
handout.
I want somebody
I-
to
it-
write
it
that.
you
should-
guys said you didn't want to
it
talk
should
about
also,
it.
No, no,
No, the handout explaining why it's.
handout, you could have a handout.
Because
that
it's
said
in
what-
everybody's pack, you
I'm
know.
agnostic on that. So, my point was to have a
Or we could
conversation.
ask the moderator for
Yeah, what she wants to
2
do.
minutes.
Well,
I don't
it
want to bring
should
it up if
be-
it's not there.
No,
we can put some of that into the explanation of our recommendations in the report. And Article 14 is one of the
That's
items
correct.
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
so that should be the discussion.
Okay, so the
That's where the discussion would be, and that the committee made this decision in light of the fact that the balance in the free cash
Right.
account is at the low end of the range that
Right.
preserves our good credit rating, and there are other demands on free cash this year,
Don, do
such
you have
as
that?
the 250.
Don, are you writing that?
I am.
Okay,
And all I was saying is add a sentence up front.
That will be-
basically says that.
it will be in the report. It will
Yeah.
be where Article 14 is.
No, but in the
It's not
trends,
going to
in the
move.
trends you did, just say, as noted, we're doing this, because most folks don't
Let me-
really read
yeah.
the table, that's why.
Let me try to
Okay.
incorporate that. Okay.
Okay, next article.
Let's see, we have Article 14, oh no, that's free cash, sorry about that. Okay, Article 20, CCRSD.
Can you put, yeah, just pull that up for a minute. So, I think, did we circulate the letter? I can't remember. We got it from, I did, right?
Yes, you did.
Yes, you
So
did.
you got the letter. Basically, So there's been an exchange of emails late this afternoon. They are not going to meet our guideline number. So the question before us is, what do we propose to do? You saw a couple things. Their projection, sorry?
This is the schools?
Yes, the
This
high
is the high
school.
school.
I don't think I saw that.
Yeah, so I sent it around last night, or it might even be in today's
I don't think
packet.
I saw it when you sent it to me today. I didn't think I had it before then, but I don't know.
So long story short, development, according to the governor's budget, the regional high school thinks they're gonna get $90,000 less in state aid than what was assumed in their budget. Is 90,000 or 80?
It was 89.
70,000 or 89,000.
Yeah, so,
Somewhere
exactly.
in there.
And so they have told us and Carlisle that if they don't make up the revenue shortfall, they're gonna cut that money from their operating expenses. And basically also told us that does not mean they can reduce the assessment to Concord. So long story short, they're still gonna be over their guideline number. And that's that, basically. So there are a couple of questions that,
So just to refresh everybody, it's about 121,000.
Is that how much it is?
Yes, yes.
Is it 121 plus the 89?
No,
No, include.
121. No,
so,
21K.
121. They're-
121.
Thank you.
So we posed, we posed a couple of questions. Anthony, can I share
Sure.
my screen? Let's see if we can do this without a hitch here. I think we can. There we go. Okay. So basically, in response to that letter, wanted to confirm that their proposed budget will be the 38.9 million that you see up there. Wanted to ask when they anticipate identifying the spending cuts to the current proposed budget to offset this revenue shortfall that they say that they may have. And then just wanted to get a sense, just wanted to confirm, number 3 is basically, so this means absolutely no change in what you're expecting Concord and Carlisle to pay. And then next question was around, well, what are your E&D balances? Because if you recall, they can't maintain more than 5%, and they don't want to go below 3% because that endangers potential bond rating for the high school. So that's kind of where things stood. I think then Eric added a question about the enrollment decrease. And the last question was, what happens if the state aid ends up being higher than they're assuming, right? So their responses, did you have a question?
Nope.
Okay, so I'll just go through the responses in red here. So, correct on the budget number, that is what it is. As you can see here, May and June, if the revenue numbers don't increase, they will identify specific cuts. May and June, okay? You have a puzzled look on your face,
Yeah, I
Kathy?
did not receive this.
Well, this is all late
Okay.
breaking, and I've been working, and so.
Okay, yeah, no, that's
But the
fine.
basic letter, I thought we had circulated. Did I
Yeah, I
not
think it
circulate
was
something?
Yeah,
I
you
did.
got the letter.
I circulated the letter. Okay, so understanding proportion reduction doesn't mean any reduction for us. The answer is yes. And so basically, here's the E&D piece. It's interesting. The actual balance is 1.776. They think at the end of this fiscal year, it'd be 1.4. And they don't know what it's going to look like in fiscal year 2025. So they basically don't know. When you do their numbers, basically, if they go down to 1.4 or 1.1, basically they're going to be at roughly 2.8%. Right, so from the 1.4, they've got to use 300,000. They're going to use for their operating budget, which they already told us.
Yes,
So they'll be at 1.1, which is 2.8%
Yeah.
right.
of their E&D.
Right. So there's typically, right, 300,000 that they take out for operating budget, just like that we talked about the million that we do. They do 300 in their own budget every year. They have for the past couple of years. It used to be a lot higher than that. But they usually recover that, meaning that the E&D doesn't drop by the 300, it stays flat, because they have other excess revenue or underspending that makes it up.
Last year was 400,000.
Yeah, okay, so usually.
We do.
Just like we do, exactly right. So if they're at, what did you say, we're at 1.8, 1.7 now, 1.8, something like that?
They're 1.8.
They have an unusual hit because of that change in health insurance, which is going to take it down 400,000.
Right.
That's, I don't think they're going to recover that. That's going to be a real hit. So we'll go from 1.8 to 1.4 in '24, and probably the 300 will be just, it'll be a wash, right? So you'll probably be around 1.4, and I think you'd be around 1.4 in '25 as well.
Right.
And that number, that percentage is in the threes, right? It's
Well, so
3.5%.
if you assume it's going to go back to 1.4, it's 3.6.
3.6, so it's not very
So
high.
it's
still
not.
pretty low.
It is low. That was the whole
Yeah.
point. This is why I wanted to see.
Yep.
Is at the end of the day,
It's kind of low, so they're
It's
low
low.
as well.
it's low, but it's not terribly low in my opinion.
It's not zero,
Frankly,
but
it's not-
it's tighter than I'm sure they'd like it to be.
Sure, but they're still going to end up at 3.6.
Okay.
So that's kind of where things stand right now. The question before us.
Can I just address some of their
Yeah.
other issues that they
Did I
raised?
answer their question? Hold on, let me
Yeah,
just
see
go
if you
through
did,
it.
yeah. I just
So
want to
that was the
points that I made
Indy.
in the letter.
Slide 10. So, Eric, this is your question, right? Total enrollment 1158. So that was for October of last year. Does not include children of, does not include, I don't know why they don't count the kids of the folks. So, really give us an answer.
Yes. Well, the reason for this was looking at the slides that they had sent over for tonight, their enrollment figure for FY '25 was significantly lower than the last trend line they showed. So I just asked them to clarify, and they did. They said that it's,
So what's the real number? That's what I'm,
It's,
it looks like they used the number as of October 1st, 2023, which was, I think, like 1,229, if I remember the line they showed. But they don't say that explicitly here.
okay, so it's the 1,200 basically is the real number.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think Chris was going to say something, Dee was
Yeah,
going to say something.
I do. I'm just going to pull up the letter that they discussed at their Tuesday meeting, right, which was the
Oh,
source of.
Can we pull up that
Do you
letter?
have that letter? I'm going to pull it up on my
I don't-
screen.
I don't have
I
it.
can get it. I can
Yeah.
get it. It's in there.
Is it in our budget pack?
No, I didn't.
No, it's not, but
No.
it's,
Okay, hold on a
I think
second.
it was
I
it
can
in the
get it.
packet?
I can pull it up on my screen, Lisa. It's okay. I just want to address their points for the committee so they have it. If I can get it.
Hold on, I just sent it to everybody a couple days ago. Yeah, here it is, right here. Here, let me share the screen here.
I can't find budget in here. Meetings and minutes, there it is.
Can you guys see this? Okay,
Okay.
There we
So,
what page are you talking about?
I'm just gonna pull it up here.
Here, I
March
pulled it up here.
26 Agenda, yep. Let me just look at it on my screen. Okay, so it was under the CCRSG budget is what the letter is. Okay, so here were the points that, I think this is from Lori, Dr. Hunter was
What's the
making.
date on this?
This was
This is
this week.
on 26, 3 days ago. 2 days.
So they talk about what they've done, right? So they did take out 110 from their original request, right? So they keep quoting a 3.08 increase. That's not correct, right? It's 3.80 because the way this compares to the guideline is without the decline in debt service.
Right.
So the actual increase is 3.80 at the high school versus, what was it, 3.26 for their guideline, right? So that's the distance that we're talking about. They mentioned the 84,000 in revenue shortfall, which Parashar discussed. They talked about how they're going to have to make that up and that it won't affect the assessments because it was coming out of revenue, right? It wasn't assumed to be property tax related. It was supposed to be state revenue, so they're going to have to make it up. They don't change what they're asking of Concord or Carlisle. It talks about E&D, and it talks about the 400,000 that they're going to have to use, so they mention the fact that E&D will be low. They also then go on to talk about what goes on in other districts, and it has a whole bunch of other schools. our school districts, and they say somewhere, and in the meeting, I think they said that was, the average was over 5%. Earlier, we had identified 8 peer districts that are often used with Concord. I went and looked at what those 8 peer districts increase were in terms of their budget increase for FY '25, and that's, it's just above 4%, it's like 4.1%. So it's a little higher than where we came out, but it's not, it's in the ballpark, right? So it's not, everybody isn't getting a 5% increase. And in fact, when I looked at those, it's pretty interesting. I encourage you to take a look at what's going on in Westford, which they have to have an override. And some of these, just about every one I looked at had pretty serious cuts in FTEs. And a number of the towns are talking about school stabilization funds because they're so concerned about the future. So it's kind of scary when you look at what's going on with these peer towns as well with respect to education costs. There was also mention, I just want to finish my points and I'll come back, all right? There was also mention of the enrollment switch, the 55,000. So just so you know what would have happened if we had been aware of that when we set our guideline. That has come up in the past where, because there's been movement where Concord has an increase in enrollment, we've said, okay, we'll take that off the top. But what that would mean is that 55,000 would have come onto the high school and out of CPS. In other words, it wouldn't have changed the overall money we were agreeing to in the guideline. It would shift between CPS and the high school. So if we were to do that, that would mean CPS would need to come up with another 55,000. So that's what that would mean. But it's referenced in here, I think, or in the meeting, it was referenced like, gee, they forgot about that. We didn't forget. It would just be a shifting from one pocket to the other. So anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay.
Shares with Carla.
Yep, so Don, and then we'll go to the room again. Don, you had your hand up?
Yeah, when we had the hearing, there was a member of the public who asked for the cost per pupil. And they said, we don't have that, but we will get it to you. But it seemed as though the enrollment has declined by about 7%. So the cost per student, at a 3% increase in the operating budget, the cost per student is up 10%. And that's using the 3.08, which is before debt service, which is, I think, because debt service is fixed, that's how I would look at it. So I think that's the variable cost portion of the budget is up about 10% per student. And I think that if we had the enrollment increasing by 100 students, they would certainly argue that they need more funds because the enrollment has jumped and we have to hire more teachers, which makes sense. So I think in a zero-based budgeting scenario, you begin with how many pupils are we serving, how many teachers do we need, et cetera. And you would end up with a budget quite a bit lower than our guidelines. So honestly, realizing, as they said they have for a long time, that this was coming, there's going to be a drop this year, and it's not quickly followed by a rebound. It's not a one-time event. I think there's more to the story, and I'd like to, where I stand right now, I don't see an explanation that would cause me to vote in favor of this budget.
Okay, Kathy and then Dee.
Yeah, I have 2 questions. Chris, one's for Chris.
Yeah.
You mentioned the 3.08.
Yeah.
Later in the memoranda, she cites, it's on page 2, when she's talking about the 84,000.
Yeah.
She said that would result in an operating budget of 2.86, so that must be incorrect as well.
Well, if they took 85,000 out, I don't know where that comes, yeah, I didn't do the math on that. I don't know.
Okay. And then the other question I have is, have we looked at a shift of that 55 between the 2 school programs?
No, they haven't.
We don't know the answer, and we did invite them to come today, but they refused, they weren't available to come, basically. So we asked Lori, Bob, Alexa, and Tracy to come, and nobody was available to come. So we're gonna take the vote based on the information that they've provided, which is what they've told us. We have enough information to make our vote.
So I have 2 questions. One is just a follow-on. What was this shifting, did they actually talk that they were going to shift?
No, so the allocation between the two schools, right, so they just mentioned it as a reason why they're over. They said, gee, we're over the guideline in the high school because we have 55 grand worth of cost associated with the fact that there are more students from Concord projected to be attending the high school than there were before. So they ascribed a component of the $120,000 excess to enrollment change.
Which is fair.
It is,
But-
so that's there, that's the
that
math.
was
But
known anyway.
But
I
what
mean-
was the reference to the shifting?
No, I was saying, if we had known it, so let's say we were back and we were
Okay.
setting the
She
guideline.
did, her memo doesn't
No,
reference.
they've said
No,
that
they
in the
talked about it in
past.
the meeting, but no, they talked about it in the
No, but
meeting
they
as well.
talked about it in the past in one of our meetings.
Oh, they have,
Yeah.
they have as well, yes, that's right, yeah. So, but the way this was done in the past, it was not we just give you another 55 on top of the guideline. It was a shifting between the two schools. And I mentioned that to Lori the first time she mentioned it. It's not on top. It's within the guideline, not on top.
So we would have done it at that time.
We would have, if
And
we,
accounted for it if we had known.
if
but
we had known. Well, we
did not-
didn't, right.
Again, this year, we did not get timely information from all the budget entities.
So we can go back and do that, but that means whatever you'd redo the number and CPS would go up. So you'd have a variance on CPS.
Right. And they've hit CPS.
They have.
So.
Or maybe there's
one-
room in CPS, I don't
So then
know.
that splits the 112, 55
It
here.
do-
and-
No, it just moves it around the table, but it's
Sloshes
still,
it around.
unless
That's what
somebody
I'm
pays
saying,
us.
it's just-
Yes.
Yeah.
It'd be
Right.
2 overrun.
Anybody
Correct.
else in the room? Otherwise, I'm going to go to Don again.
Go to Don.
Don?
Okay, thank you. So, Chris, that's not the way I understood that 55. I thought that was a shift between the split within the high school between Carlisle and Concord.
It is,
Concord's share-
it is, but the way it would be treated in the guideline is to shift more money. You cut the guideline, and then, the first thing we do is we cut the guideline, right, Don? And then we figure out the allocation. This year was a little different. We gave everybody the same amount. We don't typically do that. And in the past, when it's significant, so there was only a couple of years ago, it was big. It was I forget, but it was a sizable number. We said, okay, when we were setting the guideline, this is before you were here, Don, we said, all right, this is the pile of dough we're going to give to the budget increase. Right off the top, we're going to give the enrollment impact to the high school, and then we'll split the rest of the money between the two.
So, when we set the guideline, did we take into consideration that
No,
our enrollment
It was
students of
not
the guideline?
known. It was not known.
Okay, so if we knew then that there were 100 fewer students this year, would we have still set the guideline where we did?
Oh, this is going back. I mean, there were so many other
I don't know.
factors to consider.
Well,
We might have.
No, I think it's
might
actually
have.
the core of the question, though, because it is the spending per pupil would appear to be up about 10%, and they had said they would provide that data. In the answer to a member of the public who was smart enough to ask that question, the school said they would provide that data, and I really went through this packet looking for it, and I don't see it there. So I'm wondering what happens if we now encapsulate sort of a cost per pupil that's up 10%.
Can I
Yeah, it sounds like a rhetorical question, Don, so I'm going to move on to
I
Peggy.
bet if Lori was here, she would tell us that just because you have a reduction in students at this point in time, doesn't necessarily mean you eliminate a math section or eliminate a language section. It just means probably most of the classes are a little
Smaller
bit
class.
smaller, it's
Yeah.
not spread.
It's a little
You know, the
lumpier.
icing on the cake is just a little thinner, but you can't just
Right.
eliminate the
The
sections.
costs
It's-
probly go down in a step.
And that's
Little more,
why,
yeah.
it's quantum mechanics, right? So,
Not really.
well, as opposed to linear, and then,
It's really not.
so, I mean, I bet that's the explanation. Personally, I don't think $120,000 is worth too much fuss and bother, and I don't want to go into town meeting like last year, fighting over, well, we're fighting over a lot more money last year, but
Yeah, I'm with Don, though, because, I mean, at the end of the day, if it's not a lot of money, they've got a $44 or $45 million budget.
yeah.
go find the money.
Go find
How
them.
about, how about, if-
Remember, we just
Can't
voted.
find 120.
We just voted to take away 700, how much, $1 million from
$1 million,
taxpayers.
right.
So like, why can't the schools find $125,000? That's really what we're talking about.
Agree.
or, so I'm in that mix with you, Parashar, and Peggy. You could also say to her, you could say to the schools, split it. Give us a 60, you find 60, and we'll go home. But give us something.
I don't think we're getting that. Clearly, it was reinforced in the email we got.
Yeah, well, they already moved 110. And so I think,
No, that
They did.
was not in response to us. They've been at 125.
didn't they change the 110 before they?
No.
I thought they did after
We've been at
us.
125 since December,
Okay,
January.
since
that right?
January, thank you.
okay.
The one thing that I think we could do is to go back and to Eric's original question, look, if you're down 100 students, what's the impact of that?
What should we expect? Yeah, what should we expect
We
would
should
happen
be,
to operating
yeah, we
expenses?
should be asking that, and we should be asking for a written response to that question, to just for our own information, so that
Setting
we
guidelines
know
next
if
year.
if there is.
Next year.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that we should know, why is this change, because it's 100 off, what is the impact of that at the school? It might be they had to hire other staff, et cetera. But I think we should continue and ask them that question
So.
and get a written response.
I agree. I guess I'll just say two things. In this very room, in February, we went through some slides, including the declining enrollment. Posed some questions. When Lori came up here, she said something about, well, we've got different data that tells a different story. She said something like that. We can go check the records of the tape. But we haven't received any information in response to the trends that we've gotten. That's one thing. The second thing, Dee, we don't have time.
Well, we have time to ask the question, but I think Carlisle would also be interested in understanding the impact as well.
Well, I'll tell you what, in the email exchanges I had with Lynn at Carlisle, they have the same questions we do about the increases.
When are they voting on this? Or whether they support
They're a
this or
little
not?
bit behind
Usually
us.
after us.
They're a little bit behind us. So Lynn basically said, we're right behind you in spirit, because they've got the same questions. You were on the,
Marsha?
If whatever we vote, they have to vote,
We have a.
Lois?
in a nutshell.
And also,
They could take
this
the money
is a year when we are, even more emphatically than we did last year, warning the citizens of Concord that expenses are growing at a rate
Right.
that exceeds the rate at which revenues are growing. Property taxes are 80-something% of our source of revenue.
93%.
This is unsustainable. So if we keep saying over and over, it's necessary that every budgeting entity, take ownership of this and work on controlling cost escalation, and where appropriate, work on increasing sources of revenue. It's not a huge number in light of the percentage of their budget, but it's an important principle that everybody needs to be cooperating in addressing what we have all identified as a pretty significant long-term problem for the town. So, I would like to stick to our number and not the school's number.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think now is the time to budget within guideline, given the circumstances. This is not a lot of money on a $38 million total budget to come up with.
Can we say that to the townsfolk?
But they'll say it right back to us.
Say what? So we
In
could,
other
By our
words,
vote,
if we
If
say.
we go into the meeting different from that, we're going to have to talk about it.
yeah, we're going to talk about it, we're going to present
We
it,
go
We're
to
going to have to talk to town meeting
just
about
like
it.
we did last year.
Right.
So
And last
basically,
year, let us remember, we got voted down, but
Which we
I
probably
still
will
think
get
the
voted
principle's
down again.
important.
And so what?
Which is their right, yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, which is the town's right. I mean, people,
it's their number to the guy.
we all have our jobs to do.
Don, and then I'm gonna go to Chris and we're gonna keep moving. Do you,
Yeah, I was just going to say that I've drafted the FinCom comment on this article, and I've added to it the cost per pupil, the change in education per cost per pupil. And I was looking forward to getting the details tonight from the school. Absent that, I'm going to say it's approximately a 10% increase. And I think that putting that in there will be further reinforcement for a no vote.
Go Don.
Peggy, did you have something? Otherwise, Chris is gonna say something. Chris?
So I was gonna say, I think we're ready for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're ready for a motion. So it sounds like, listening to everybody, that we want to stick with our number. And so I guess I'd make a motion to, do we have to, do we, I don't know that we,
We did last year, so
What
what
did
we
we
ended
say?
up doing is we make a motion to have the finance committee amend
amend the amount.
the amount
That's in
at
the-
finance, at the town
Affirmative
meeting.
action at the guideline number.
That's what it is.
To
It's
get a guideline
I
number.
move affirmative action at the guideline number. Okay,
And then we made a presentation.
that's right.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Second,
Okay,
Read
Kathy
it,
did
tell me
the
the words that you used again.
Affirmative action at the guideline number for CCRSD. Right.
Okay.
We should probably enumerate that guideline number in our minutes, but I don't
It's,
have.
our guideline vice chair's got the number.
yeah, she's got the number. Lindsay's got it.
What's the number?
Oh, do you want the dollar amount?
You
Yeah.
want the assessment or you want the budget?
The dollar amount.
Dollar
I
amount.
know, but what? You want their budget, whether, in the warrant, is it the assessment number for Concord?
It's the assessment
It's the
number. I think
assessment
is what
number,
they're-
so it has to be that.
So
Oh, the
yeah,
guidelines.
23029906, is that what you have?
No. So
No.
that's, what is
See the
it?
Concord part.
It's
That's the Concord part, yeah.
Here we go.
This slide says 23,150.
This has to be reduced
Well,
by
that's what they're proposing.
100. So how much are they
Our
over the
guideline
guideline?
was.
So it's basically 26,140,908 minus,
We have to get the exact number.
we have to get the exact number that they're over
Yeah,
on
the
the
exact
guidelines.
number
Do you
I
have that
need.
number?
26,108,
26,140,908
140.
minus, can we
Whatever
do the
the
math
gap is.
offline here?
What is that number that you just read?
That's the
That's the
assessment.
assessment to Concord for the high school.
Okay, so that's including debt?
Yes,
Yes.
it does.
So we have to take out the excluded
Right.
debt.
So
So
I'll tell you what, why don't we
is
come
it-
back to this?
We're gonna come back to
Let
this.
Lindsay do the math. Let's
Right.
come back. and
It's at
we'll-
our guide, no, just the guideline amount.
Guideline amount,
and
okay,
then
and we'll come back to fill it in.
And we're gonna put in the
Yeah.
dollar amount.
So you're sorry, with the debt service, 26,14908, right, is with the debt service?
Yes.
What they're proposing is without the debt service is in their letter, 23,150,489.
Right.
Our
Right.
guideline is 23,029,906.
And then you have to add the, yeah, so.
And then
subtract-
add back the debt?
Well,
Okay.
no, subtract their 23 from our 23, and that's what you subtract
All
from
she
it.
has to put is our 23,
Well, I know
right?
where they're,
For the minutes, we just say the guideline number.
Yeah, just say,
but
we'll
when we
get
make
the number.
motion at
We'll
town
actually
meeting,
put in,
That's
yeah,
where we need the number.
exactly.
that's where we
So
need the
give me the
debt back in
guideline
there?
We'll
number.
we'll do the math, it's
Okay.
easy.
What's the guideline number?
Oh, don't worry about
Guideline
it.
without-
No, I do worry about it.
Guideline number for Concord without
Yes.
the debt, 23,029,906.
029,
906.
906, all right, thank you.
Without debt.
Without debt.
And then I can figure out what the debt is if you want. Just one sec.
Okay, so we have a motion. And the clerk's ready,
And second,
and a second.
I'm a little unclear on the motion. Is the motion that we're voting that FinCom recommend affirmative action on Article 20 with the assumption that Article 20 will have been amended?
no,
Yes.
done. We're
We're amending
recommending
it.
affirmative action as a guideline number. What we're saying is, we're recommending that town meeting vote to approve a CCRSD budget of, fill in the number that Lindsay's calculating. How that gets achieved, that's up to the schools. That's up to CCRSD. We're saying we're voting for we're recommending the town budget, the town meeting approve a budget of that much money for the schools.
About 120 less than they proposed.
125.
Exactly. That's the motion. And I think we don't need to be more specific than that. We shouldn't be. It's not our role to manage the specifics of how the money gets spent. We believe that they should be able to manage their spending to within the guideline.
And we can talk to the moderator to make sure we get this part right.
No, that's fine.
Oh, yeah.
After we take our vote, we should let Carlisle know what we did on this particular
Yeah,
article.
they'll know. Lynn and I have been,
Okay, great.
we're good on that. Okay, so do we get the roll call?
Oh, roll call. Sorry about that.
Ding, ding.
Okay, so roll call. Sarish,
Aye.
Peggy,
Aye.
Eric,
Yes.
Kathy.
Yes.
Do we have, Greg,
No.
Don,
Yes.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Dee, yes, Parshar,
Yes.
no, Christine,
Yes.
and Lois.
Yes.
That was a yes. Okay,
Yes.
One no.
I know. One no, and the rest yes. Thank you.
Okay. Next article, which is article, the restroom building. So my understanding is the restroom building has been withdrawn.
Right.
Yes.
Has been what?
Has been
Withdrawn.
withdrawn.
Oh, okay.
As
The article's
pre-
been withdrawn, yeah.
Sorry?
Yeah, the article has been withdrawn.
Yeah.
Okay,
Isn't that correct?
that
Yes.
is correct.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
so we're now on to Article 24, which is the Thoreau.
The row, yeah.
What is that?
I know what it is, so.
Ed, why don't you lead the
okay.
discussion?
Yep,
Okay.
so.
Pull that up.
This is
or
their,
anything else.
Do we have that little picture?
400 and something.
Anyway, I'll explain what it is. So.
Thank you.
So apparently, for a while, well, remember there was a fire at Thoreau? You guys, some of the guys have been around for a while. So I think when that happened, they started to rethink about what they wanted to do with that campus and whether there was other pieces of work that needed to be done. So in last year's capital budget, they had set aside some money to have a consultant do some work and provide a plan for what they might want to do. And there was a couple of issues they were looking to solve. There's some erosion on the site, which if you go over there, you'll see it, right? So it's the whole property, the back of the property has a big slant to it. There's also, they had put in, when they had the fire, they had temporary buildings, and they had some gravel put down over formerly grass areas. So they want to change that back, and they also want to fix parking and fix traffic flow. So if you've been over to Thoreau is buried within a neighborhood. It's probably of any of the schools, it's the one that's really within schools, with homes all around it. So the parking, the way the parking
And the
is set up
Assabet
is
River.
just, is not, it's, right, it's not set up very well, so they're looking to have that fixed. So they got the consultant report back. The estimate on everything, on all phases of this, would be about $700,000. It's not clear that they're going to do all phases of it, and this was his estimate. It includes landscaping, includes redoing the parking, it includes a new playground. Right there's some of the pictures of what we're talking about. So from a budget perspective, in their capital budget for FY25, there's $200,000 for this project. There's also $200,000 that they received as a gift. So there was someone who endowed them with money for this. So they have $400,000 if they get the budget approved on the capital side this year. They'll have $400,000. The remaining $300,000 to reach the $700,000, they might go to CPC or they might do private fundraising. They don't know, but they want to start. So they think they have $400,000 if they get this $200,000 in their capital project. So that's what it's for. It is based on this consultant's report. I think they had a reasonable discussion on it. They talked about ways to also cut the costs. So there's something going on, I think it's in Carlisle, if I have the town right, where they call it, I'm going to get the name wrong, but it's like citizens and students actually do the labor. There's a name for it, town build or something?
Indentured servant?
No.
Really?
No, that wasn't it.
No, that's in here.
Is that even allowed, students?
Apparently, well, I
not
can't
going
answer
there.
any questions on it. They talked about it, but it's a way to offset the cost. So I think they're going to be creative about trying to get it done. So that's what it's for. I wanted to understand it. So after I heard about it, my only question remains, why would they do this when they're just about to finish the facility study, right? So we're going to have this facility study on all of CPS. Will this be the top priority, or, you know, is this something we have to start now, or should we be waiting to see what everything else comes in at?
Oh, good point.
That was my,
Good point.
was my question on it. The dollars did not seem unreasonable to me, but I don't, you know,
It's a
that was,
good question, but
there-
if they have a donation.
yeah, they have it, that may be that they have 200,000 they can start with. So they're gonna phase it, is what it sounded like. But that would be my one question, but.
Questions, comments? Don, you're usually good about some of this stuff? Greg?
Greg's up.
Greg, you have more info for us?
No, I don't have more info. I was actually going to ask Chris, do you know if the facility study, do you know if it's just buildings or is it grounds too like this? I'm not aware of the facility
I don't
study
know,
yet.
that's a good question. I don't know. I assume it was, I assume it's grounds too. I don't know. It's a good question.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I wish I had gone over to look at it, but Chris, does it look as if it's in any way dangerous situation as it is today?
You mean the parking or what part?
What, any of this, anything that's we're
No,
addressing?
no, it doesn't look like a dangerous situation,
Or
no.
they would
Okay.
have closed
No, I
it
don't
by
think so. I don't get that impression. I think they talked a lot about the problems with drop-off. So the picture that's up would be the revised plan, and you see the buses are out in the front.
Yeah.
And then there's a street, I don't know what the name of it is, right off of Pleasant where the cars can come in and then they kind of make a U-turn and go out. They're not able to do that today. I think the cars all come down the left-hand side of the school, and there are people parking and pulling out, and it sounded as if it's kind of a difficult situation.
yeah.
So if there's anything around, and what this would allow, you see that sidewalk thing that goes up to the, you see where the green thing is, where the cars
Yeah.
go around it? You see that sidewalk? That would be
Yeah.
the designated drop-off place now for students. And the principal talked about how they really need a place, because they have kids, a lot of kids walk to that school, ride their bikes to that school, and they need a place where they have people waiting to say, okay, you know, to sort of manage the children so they're not out in the street. And so this would be safer for the children, I believe, to have this drop-off set off. That was certainly discussed. But they didn't say, you know, it's terribly unsafe at the moment. It seems like it would be a big improvement, and they would have a little bit more parking, and they would have a new playground up off to the left, and they'd be able to fix this erosion problem and some landscaping issues that they have. So that was the design.
Did they talk at all about how they were going to phase this project?
They did not. The way, you can see, you see these numbers here? So
Yeah.
the architect or the designer, he grouped them
Yeah,
into the four
by color,
categories.
yeah.
So the question is, they really just reviewed this week. So the
Okay.
question is, which of these do you do first? And they don't know. But they liked that they could group it into these buckets. You could spend 70 on this and 30 on that
Okay,
and so forth.
so
yeah.
that's why they only asked for the 200,000?
Well, they already have 200 in a gift.
Yeah.
And then they think they
They
would
asked-
go to CPC and other sources.
Okay,
so-
for the other, but
for
they
the
asked,
other.
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So the total is 670.
Yeah, I understand that. I just was trying to
Yeah.
get a sense of the timing and if they had discussed that at all, but
Lindsay,
this is it. Okay.
You guys go to Thoreau?
We don't go to Thoreau, but I go there a lot because my kids have activities there.
Okay.
And it is a really difficult parking
Yeah,
situation.
that's
Or-
what they
and it's-
seem to
yeah,
say, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, you say, is it dangerous? I mean, how do you define dangerous? I don't,
Yeah.
it
it's a
can be dangerous
Yeah. It's a
sometimes.
small
To
When
date
it's
myself,
busy.
So
but I was
let's do
on
this. It's
I was on-
8:15, college basketball's on. Does anybody have any concerns or questions about this? We've got Barton waiting patiently.
I think these are good changes.
Yeah, so go ahead.
I think this is a reasonable request, given everything I've heard, and I'll just note that there are two other items in this article. It's not just the row, it's the
Yes.
Alcott.
This is the one we had questions on.
That's the one I
I think
had
we
a
were okay
question
with the rest of
Yeah.
it. Yeah,
Okay.
we were okay with the rest of it.
Right, right, it's 400,000 or 500,000 in
Fire
total.
alarm and
One
the
was a
dump
dump
truck.
truck, and the other one's the fire alarm replacement system, so.
I make,
Will be used for this.
I make a motion to approve the amount for Article 24.
Can I get a second?
To vote affirmative action.
To vote affirmative, yeah. To vote affirmative action on Article 24.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Get a roll call, please.
Roll call, here we go again. Suresh.
Aye.
Peggy.
Aye.
Kathy.
Aye.
Eric.
Aye.
Greg.
Aye.
Don.
Aye.
Lindsay.
Aye.
Dee, yes. Parshar.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Lois.
Aye.
Thank you. Unanimous.
Okay, what's the next article here?
Solar.
Solar, so solar, so Terry, you're on. Do you want to talk a little bit, give us an update on what's happening with solar? So basically, the light board wants to go ahead with a battery, but not this location. There are some technical issues around whether the warrant can be amended at ATM or not, and Terry's going to give us an update. Terry?
Okay, I'm not sure I'm totally prepared, but what I've seen is that there's a proposal to have a special town meeting within the annual. And, well, you know what? Let me find the document and I can share the screen. 'Cause
You can go ahead and do that, but I mean, I don't want to take a lot of time here. At the end of the day.
We're not ready to vote on it.
We're not going to be able to vote because the article may in fact totally change.
Okay.
So,
Light board's taking this up.
Exactly.
yeah, so
April 10th, so let's
just
wait.
FYI, we can do what we need to do at town meeting when we're
Recommendation
going
at-
to
I
have
move
it.
the recommendation at town meeting.
Yes,
Yes, thank you.
okay, good. So, but just be aware, don't go anywhere, you're going to be hemmed in. So, Martin, why don't you come on up? CPC appropriation recommendation, Article 40. I think there are a series of questions.
Wake up, Burton. All right, Burton. Would you spell your last name, please?
Anthony, can you pull up?
Thanks.
Okay. The floor is all yours.
For me?
Yep.
Well, I think I came back to answer any additional questions you might have. The question you had directed was,
We get a little bit.
Excuse me, could you speak into the mic,
Is that
please?
mic on?
so at the last meeting, I think you wanted additional information on funding requests for this year that might result in additional funding requests in the future.
Right, so this notion of 3-5-year plan?
Right. So I went through this year's funding, and there were essentially 3 projects that were design and projects that would presumably be followed up by construction projects. And then I put these in a different category, but the things that are more or less standing requests that we know they come back year after year. Those are easy to deal with. The one's the Regional Housing Services Office. That's a small request of $33,500, which is that number hasn't really changed the entire time I've been on CPC. Then there's the CPC staff and technical support number, which is $46,000 this year. That fund has historically been relatively level, though it jumped up a couple of years ago when the town started actually assessing the legal fees to CPC. So that's at about 2.5% of our funding, and historically it's been 2%. The other one that may be becoming a standing request is what we get from the Housing Trust. We are proposing $500,000 for them this year, as opposed to funding other specific housing projects. Though I was pretty clear with the Housing Trust that wasn't meant to indicate in the future we would delegate our responsibility for picking projects, and that we would be giving them essentially undesignated funding going forward. But my sense from talking to Keith Bergman is that until there's an alternative funding mechanism, as you know, approved by the legislature, that they would be coming back looking for that sort of aggressively to focus on housing needs. So then that goes back to the three things that that were design and planning projects. The Hillcrest Steps, the Assabet Bridge Trail, and the cemetery metal structures. And town staff on my behalf reached out to each of those applicants. And unfortunately, I don't have a lot of good numbers to give you, but I'll go through each. The Hillcrest Steps, so that was, I think, a request of about $75,000 for design and permitting. The response to that was, we really won't know what the cost is until we get a design, but we would guess it would be in the range of $100,000 to $200,000. Now, the original proposal for that was in total about $75,000, but that came from a neighborhood committee that didn't actually even have any sort of legal entity to which we could provide funds, and it's town property, so we told them, it was about 3 years ago, the first time they applied, they said, get the town on board, come back. And as soon as you get the town on board, then you have the town public bid laws. So that's why the cost goes so high. The next was the Cemetery Metal Structures project. This is DPW, working with the group within DPW that maintains the cemeteries. And they said, no, we can't give you any number, no estimate whatsoever. The reason for the study is to assess scope and price the restoration work, essentially. But I would anticipate them coming back, and I wouldn't even speculate on the number. The Assabet Bridge Trail, I do have some more specific information on. So that is the West Concord Bridge, that there's a lot of elements to it right now because it's also part of that connecting that 40B project. And it's sort of a pretty essential element of that. And Elizabeth Hughes provided me more information on that. The total cost to get to the 25% design, as outlined in the application, is $850,000. Now, there's been previous grants to get the design to where we are now. I don't know if you'd say we're at the 10% design or whatever, but we've got some design funds that have been expended. She's come to the CPC to request another $200,000 in CPA funds. That was under the assumption that she would get $668,000 in funds from other sources. She filed for 2 grant applications, one of which was a Mass Trails grant for $268,000. That is outstanding. She has not been awarded it, but she's optimistic. The other was a $400,000 federal grant. She just found out that we were passed over for that. So she's identified another grant, which I forget the timeline on that, but I think it's early summer that would step in to replace that. So she's looking for that. Now, assuming if she's not able to get grant funding, she would need to come back to the CPC or other, to the town general fund to get that to the 25% design, which would then unlock that. Once she gets the 25% design done, as I mentioned last time I was before you, it is now part of the 5-year transportation improvement plan that the state has, which means it's eligible for funding. They don't specify it for specific appropriations year until you get to the 25%. So if we get to the 25% at that point, then they say, okay, now you're officially in the queue for, let's say, 2027 for the construction funds, which would be $8 to $10 million. Now, our experience with the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail is that even once you get that state funding, there's a number of add-on requests, because in Concord we tend to like to do things with a little bit of extra, we make things nicer than the state's willing to pay for. So we had standing requests that came.
If I find $1 million somewhere, I can tell you where that is.
Well, no, but these are things like neighbors come back and they want additional fencing or landscaping on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. We had a number of these requests of about $50,000 a year for about 3 years. And in my experience, having been part of the planning board and the CPC, those were the things that made that the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail so popular and such a success going through West Concord, because Marshall Rasmussen followed through and did all of those things that the state would otherwise say, no, you get your pavement and that's it. So I would anticipate additional small requests like that.
So how much do you think it's going to come to? So I listened to all that, but what do you think the number is that we have ahead of us? So we already gave her some. She wants 200 now. What do you think is the future?
I think the scope of So if she has to come back if she can't get federal grant for
doesn't get that
400,000, she would be coming back for that rapidly.
Yeah.
Right? If she gets that, then you're talking in probably 5 years, once you're through the tip cycle and construction stage, she's coming back for small dollar amounts, like $50,000 in a given year. Unlike the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, which ran through, past a whole bunch of people's backyards, this is connecting the train parking lot with a new 40B project. There's not gonna need to be a ton of different landscaping and privacy fences and the like.
So, Burton, the 850, that's the design element, right?
That's the design.
What about the construction?
It's
cost.
10 million.
The feds are gonna, at this point,
Sorry.
Well,
do we know that for sure?
Well, so the process is this, and this goes to questions that were raised about why do we spend the money on these design funds and so forth, right? So the process is you submit a project for.
No, I'm not questioning the need for this, the
Well,
design.
I'm talking about, is it for sure the 8 to 10?
Yeah,
Okay, so you get the Metropolitan Area Planning Organization that controls this TIP
yep,
to accept your project as being TIP eligible.
Yep.
Once it's TIP eligible, then it can be funded. Now, there are other projects that have been TIP eligible, like the Concord Rotary, for over 25 years.
Yeah.
Right.
So they can sit there for a really long time. But once it's in that queue, once you get to that 25% design, you can generally expect funding. In my experience, tracking projects within a year or two.
Question, Burton, did you go back and research how much money has been requested for the study for this in previous years?
I haven't added those up for you, no, sorry.
Because I think it would be of value to know how much money has already gone into the study phase of this project. And then another thing is, with regards to the construction of the apartments that are going to be on the other side of the river, I think that there should be an effort made by, I don't know who, if it's the town or some committee, that they should be approaching the developer about funding for the actual bridge construction.
Well-
Because I do believe that there is money available there.
Well, so, two things. There was a commitment by the developer, and I'll be honest, I haven't been following that project as closely as I would typically, but they are on the hook for connecting to the end of this pathway that will be made, bringing it through their neighborhood and bringing it to the other side onto the Baker Avenue extension, right? But I also know that, for example, they've come to the Housing Trust for funding for the sewer hookup, which is CPC funds. So they're actually already getting funds as opposed to contributing funds. I don't know to the degree there's money on the table for other amenities.
But I do think that, looking in the background to see how much money has already gone into this study, because if the total amount of the study is 850,000, I think that there is probably 100 to 200,000 already available from the past that has not been spent, or if it has been spent, how is it spent?
One other question for you, Bert. So there are other projects. This is just this year, right? We have stuff from before that can come back, right? Like
Matt Johnson raised some questions, followed up with me in an email on some projects that were designed that have not proceeded yet.
that have not proceeded yet, right.
There's the, I forget the name of the park, but right in town with the parking lot, that little wooden
that bridge?
boardwalk.
The bridge there.
What's that park's name? Chamberlain, thank you.
Chamberlain, right.
Yeah, so that's one.
When I was on CPC.
Yep, exactly, exactly. Me too.
Well, they redid it.
Well,
They had
I don't want to
redo
date you,
it.
but I think the issue is that you funded it, and now it's
It's broken.
decrepit.
Exactly.
I was
So-
just gonna say also,
That I can give you an update on, which is that's going to design this year, and Delia said that is actually in the capital budget for like 2027, so she didn't think she'd be coming to CPC for the actual construction on that. The other one was the Rifle Range Trail, which I said in error, we had already funded construction funds there. We funded the design and permitting there, and so Delia will be coming back for construction funds there. But yeah, I mean, there are 15 to 20 projects a year, and I'd say 12 to 20 projects a year that come through the CPC process, and anyone that's in a town that's a capital project generally is preceded by a series of design
Right.
requests.
And Warner's, so that one, they've got, I don't know.
Warner's Pond?
800,000, I forget what the number was that they got at a CPC. It's a significant amount.
Yeah, I think it's
they were
9.
gonna need like 3 million, they thought, before the dredging versus dam discussion was going on.
Right.
We're still gonna have that discussion. If they need more than what they expected, I assume they're gonna come back to CPC, because that was one of their sources of funding.
If they dredge and they need more, they would be coming back.
Right.
If they don't
Sorry,
dredge,
if they don't dredge, or-
then the funding that we granted them.
Will come back.
Approximately 3/4 of it is not eligible for other types of projects. So it wouldn't be eligible for dam removal, or, for example. Yeah, but that's a good example of a project where we've spent money on the initial design and permitting process, and then when they got to the actual construction, the number came in 3-4 times higher than they
Higher than I
expected, so we
thought.
said no.
Yeah.
So is there a place that I could go to in terms of finding a status report on each project that is still in process?
Dee, as you well know, we have that spreadsheet that tracks historically, and some of
Oh.
those projects sit out there for
Right.
about 7 years, and while you were on the committee, we did a lot of cleanup to
Yep.
shut down and those things.
Yep.
What I could do is I could ask Ann for that spreadsheet and share it with the committee.
Okay.
It's,
The Finance Committee would be interested in seeing that, I know.
yeah.
Well, in general, I mean, for me, it's frustrating because we can't see, you know,
Right.
this is simply a funding source, but yet projects come through it, right? So if Delia has a list and she knows this is what I'm gonna put in the town budget and this is what I'm gonna come here, then that's the list I would wanna see. I
Right.
wanna see that for 10 years. What are you thinking of? Right, so we can sort of see it, because we don't remember year over, you know, it becomes hard to sort of look at it. And frankly, we always spend the money, and I always think like, you know, if the town has a lot of needs. You listen to our conversation tonight, we have a lot of capital stuff that we can't fund. And if some of it can be funded through CPC, I'd rather go through a prioritization process than simply having people throw stuff over the wall to the CPC authorization process. In other words, have it compete for resources among the whole, than have it be this thing off on the side. I think initially it was meant for historic preservation, you know, which kind of is usually outside of town management, but a lot of the stuff that's in there now is kind of town expenses that need a place to go, and they end up over
Well,
here.
and I agree with that, and I think we're gonna have a third tap, which is the schools. Right? They've already said, maybe the restroom building, the facilities building, whatever
Fields.
you wanna call it. The fields, the irrigation, I think, is on,
No, not yet.
well, that's my point, though.
Yeah.
Right? There's no irrigation, you're building a
Can't
brand-new
use it for
field.
irrigation, actually, so they
Well,
can't. grow
whatever,
it. Yeah.
but, so the point is, this may be a new, so I would encourage, looking at Anthony, you guys, and the schools, when we do the capital plan for that town, we ought to integrate everything, because a lot of this stuff is investment that, again, as Chris said, should be prioritized. Figure out long-term, where does the money kind of come from?
It's not our charge to prioritize. It is up to the CPC to make
can. No, I
decisions.
understand that, but
I-
within-
But I
But if they're
agree that
using
we,
this as a funding source for
I-
town projects,
I-
Finance
it's
committee.
mixed.
well, it is, but that's legitimate.
Yeah, but but people, I don't think people anticipated multi-year projects
Well,
sitting
I-
in CPC,
I
but
agree
that's what
with
has
what you're
happened.
saying. I agree with what you're
Yeah.
saying. We are, if you do an analysis of every
40, 50% is town.
every town that has a CPC, and you look at what percent is town projects versus
Right.
other projects, we're actually much better
Really?
than most of the other ones out
When we
there.
passed the
Okay.
CPC, we made it very clear at town meeting that the majority of the projects should be town projects.
Yeah.
And we were getting basically the state match to fund our town projects. And I just looked at this list and, you know, the repeat offenders, the Art Association, 51 Walden, surprised that's.
You need the microphone, Peggy.
Peggy, could you
Peggy,
speak into the
Peggy.
mic?
Peggy, you need the microphone.
Is a Scout House. So, you know, there are, you know, historic
Historic,
preservation But
If the
it
town is
should
going to
be
use it as a
town
funding
issue.
source, that's cool, but it needs to be part of the capital plan. We have to be able to see it.
And to be clear, when I was saying we
You have to.
prioritizing, it was we, the residents, need to prioritize. And the only way to do that is if you have it as part of a cohesive plan, not the
That-
finance committee
Either
prioritize.
that or attend
That's
the
right.
CPC
And
meeting.
so it's really, this should be brought up to the town manager and the finance director, our
And the
CFO.
CPC director and
right
the
there,
CFO
who's
folks,
sitting right
yes.
there. And it's not a reflection on how the CPC has been
No, I think they
provided
do a
funds.
good job.
It's,
Yeah, it's not,
it's to have better
A
coordination.
few things that I wondered this same sort of thing. When is it just another another bucket of money for town projects versus something
Right.
that's different? And I've sort of gone back and forth a little bit. One of the important things is to remember the requirements of the act itself, right? You cannot supplant spending that the town's otherwise doing through other mechanisms. It needs to be in these specific categories of, well, right.
Yeah, yeah.
I would like to argue that one. I think that we are using it that
Well,
way.
so like, for example, this year, a project where we had to think about that this year, the 250 trees.
Yeah.
You know, the town has a tree program, if you can go and ask
Exactly.
for a tree.
Right.
So are we
Not a fan.
replacing money that
Right.
CPW would otherwise spend?
That's
And
right.
we have to be very careful that it doesn't in this
Yeah.
case. Now, if you're investing in a, you know, a football field restroom that otherwise wouldn't get built, that's not supplanting town funding. But then there are the requirements around the 10% funding, you know, 10% of the budget has to go to
Yes,
each of
right. You have
the
the
categories.
buckets, right.
And there's other things, I mean, that are the constraints on that. On the other hand, yes, a lot of the projects do come from the town, and as a member of the CPC, I've wondered, at what level is that coordinated amongst, say, Public Works versus Recreation versus so forth?
I don't
you
know.
It's not.
It
And
doesn't
some
appear to
groups-
be.
Some
I
groups
don't
within
know.
town are really good at this.
Yeah.
Marcia Rasmussen brought a great deal of expertise and knew how to leverage the CPC on things like that. Recreation has struggled with some of their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So having that coordination there is, I think, makes logical sense, and that
Yeah.
direction in terms of what the
Right, but
funding.
it's also this concept of long-term planning, right? We have economic pressure on us big time, and we're trying to figure out how we fund big projects. And if we have money that's sitting there, and it's not a lot of money, it's about $1 million, maybe it's $2 million a year.
Thereabouts.
And as you say, there's only so many buckets you could actually use for town projects. So, but still, as I asked you at the other meeting, we don't have to spend it. You could
That's right.
save it.
We can
And say,
save it.
I'm gonna save this amount till I have, you know, $1 million set aside for the Assabet Bridge, or this or that, whatever it would be, and say that's what it's going to, as opposed to $45,000 for a bench by the cemetery.
Right.
That's the stuff, I'm not into it. Like, what, you know, small amounts, if I really have big requests coming, doesn't make sense to me. I understand why the CPC looks at it, you know, if you're, again, you get a list of things and you have to look at your criteria, and I think you guys do a good job, but I think from a town planning perspective, it's not effective, so.
Yeah, I mean, so in this year, right, we continue to keep a reserve about $700,000.
Good.
And we did turn down about $650,000 in requests. They were withdrawn, but in the face of us saying we didn't think it made sense that we were getting those
Good.
requests.
You know, Burton, one thing you might want to consider would be asking the applicant to say, is this going to be a multi-year request?
Oh, well, we do that.
Do you?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, if we think there's gonna be multiple
it's on their
requests.
form.
And-
It's on
and
their
there-
form.
There had been the habit, I think, then, you know, let's say we get something that's like the bathroom request that comes forward, and they say, oh, we need $2 million. Well, seeing on the CPC, historically, they'd say, how about we do $400,000 this year, and then you come back next year and
And we
apply
did
again.
that with the
And
fields at the high
I've
school.
been somebody that says, don't do that, because I don't want to bind a committee of people that is reconstituted next
Exactly.
year.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We're gonna try to speed this along because Kathy's had her hand up, Don is raising his hand, and just as a reminder to the FinCom, we usually go through this in 15 or 16 different,
Yeah.
each individual vote. So let's streamline the discussion. I think you've gotten the message.
Very good.
Long-term planning would be helpful with the town and the schools, but go ahead.
I would like to say that I think the Preservation Commission does a very nice job, and I think that the town benefits greatly from having that resource. So I know, Christine, that you're very frustrated. I don't share it because if you pull everything up to major prioritization, a lot of things aren't going to get done. And I think that the things that do get done in terms of enhancing the town little by little, looking at some of the projects, you know, fixing the fences at the cemeteries, you know, they
Fixing the monument in front of here. Where the
I mean, they
town
have, they,
write names on it.
I think it's what keeps the town in good shape and the kind of town we want to live in. So that's what I want to say.
Don?
Yeah, so my request, Burton, would be that for multi-part projects, in other words, anything where the 200,000 requested here today is not in totality, that there be some sort of a picture that shows that says this is a piece of a $10 million project, and the rest is to be determined. And secondly, that when we come back each year, if you could share a scorecard or a status of what's been done in the past, so we kind of have it all in our head, I think that would be helpful. I think a lot of the discussion each year is around these questions. Gee, didn't we already do 500,000 on that, or something of this sort? And it's all easily explained, but it would be helpful if we had a program, if you will. Thanks.
Eric and then Peggy.
And along similar lines, the 500,000 for the Affordable Housing Trust, I'd be interested in understanding that's going to be an annual request, right?
I think the trust wants to come back and make an annual request. I was pretty clear with the trust that we weren't making a commitment to make open-ended contributions to the trust in future years. We did it this year and asked the two other housing groups that had more specific requests to withdraw theirs.
Okay. Along the same line, I'd like to understand we talked a little bit about this at the hearing last week. What's the goal? Like, what's the target balance for that? And how's the money flowing out?
For housing?
Yeah.
I mean, so the goal it's first of all to deal with the immediate issue that we dropped below 10%. So we all of a sudden have, two projects with, what is it now, about 400 units of 40B housing coming into town, right? So it is to get us back above the state goal of 10% is sort of the critical goal. We had been doing that with what was going to be the assisted living facility, and because that fell apart at the last moment, we'd funded over $1 million towards that. That fell apart. Those funds came back, and all of a sudden we had a whole bunch of money that had been previously allocated. That went to the trust. And then they followed up with another $500,000 request, which was just essentially in line with the historical amount we funded towards housing, slightly higher than normal. I think that percentage was around 28% of our funding for that year. We're around 22% for housing typically. I think there's a lot of open questions in terms of what it will look like in the future, because if there is a real estate transaction surcharge, that's going to be a much larger source of funding than CPC could ever come through. And so probably you would see CPC, the request from CPC decline.
I have,
Peggy's got a question, and
Okay.
then Dee.
okay.
Peggy, you see it?
What is the state match this year?
That is a great question. I think the state match worked out to be I want to say it was like 16%. It's obviously,
That's
it was well, we started out at about 100%
Right.
match, and then it dropped way down, and then last year there was a big bump. The additional funds were essentially just appropriated for CPC grants, and we got back up to like 25%, and I think this year we're back down to about 13%.
Okay, so the state's paying that much. I would just, I guess, Chris, like to rebut a little bit about your, large projects, town projects, because I look at some of these projects, and I've, like Dee, been on this committee, and, when you look at some of the non-town projects, 51 Walden, the Art Association, Scout House, Robbins House, these are they're not much money, but game-changing amounts. And this is such an important program, so I would favor of the whole package.
Dee?
I just had one question that I wasn't able to ask the other night, which is, you know, the project where you have the steps and you're replacing the steps, and I looked at the photo, and it seemed as though you could do it without steps. Had that been part of the discussion? It just looks like it's not a very steep.
It is a cliff.
Oh, it is a cliff? Oh, good, we could fall off, right?
Erosion.
That's to design it, that's not to construct it.
Yeah,
So they'll be
but,
back.
but the steepness of it, I've more or less carried Diane up and down that hill because it is so steep.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I wouldn't, it
It's
will
not a
be.
path.
This doesn't have to do with finance.
Yeah.
This is design. Can we, you're
It's
trying to move on.
finance.
No,
I
they're
I agree with Kathy.
I know.
I don't think we should focus on making all the decisions for
Right,
CPC. That's what they do.
It's
Thank you
taxpayer
for,
money, and so
thank you
we'll
for
get
trying to
say.
answer the question.
Okay, so I'll just summarize. So I do think there ought to be some joint planning with the town and the schools, particularly if they're going to be coming to you year over year. I think it'd be good for all of us. I also think having sort of a look back and a look forward so that we have a comprehensive look versus piece by piece, I think would be helpful. You heard some of that, I think, from the committee. And the planning, in my opinion, doesn't mean you do away with the small projects. Whether you want to save up for money later or not, the CPC and others can decide, but at least people are around the table talking about it together. I think that's what would be helpful, frankly. But that's for you guys to take our advice and take it or leave it. So let's go ahead and go through the specific items. Let me ask one question first to maybe save ourselves time. Are there any items here that people would like to remove from a consent list? Because I would like to do this by consent where possible. So Chris, which one would you like to
I
remove?
have three.
Three of them? Okay, that's fine. So which ones?
D, which is steps, F, which is trees, H is the bench.
Okay. Anybody have any others?
I'm sorry, did you say B?
D is in dog.
D is in
Dog.
D, F.
F
What
is in
page are you on in the?
page
in-
53.
53.
D is in dog, F is in Frank, and H is in hallelujah. The night is almost over.
You mean the prison
Of the rail tra-
cemetery?
of the cemetery.
Anybody have any
What?
others?
Please repeat.
Sorry, H, the prison cemetery one?
Correct.
Okay.
What number?
D is in dog,
Yep,
The Hillcrest Steps.
F is in Frank,
yep.
and H is in
250th
Henry.
trees.
Okay?
And
Does anyone else have any others that they want to consider separately? Good. If not, can I get a motion from somebody to go ahead and vote affirmative action on the remaining ones, which are A, B, C, E, G,
Well, does Burton
I
have to
through
be
Q.
here for that, for this?
No,
or it's up to him.
Interested?
Oh, all right, okay, all right.
It is his committee. He can
And
lose.
we're taking those off, and then are we going to have further discussion about
Yes,
them?
yes. So first I want to go through and do the consensus calendar if everybody agrees. Can I get a motion?
move affirmative action on A, B, C, E, F,
No.
No, not E,
G.
E, G.
I through
I,
Q.
through
J,
Q.
K, L, M, N, O, P, Q.
Okay, can I get a motion? Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay,
Roll
good.
call, please.
Suresh,
Aye.
Peggy,
Aye.
Kathy,
Yes.
Eric,
Aye.
Greg,
Yes.
Don,
Aye.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Dee, yes. Parshar,
Yes.
Christine,
yes.
Lois. Lois?
Okay, keep going. So let's now go to Article.
Sorry, I was muted. Yes.
Article,
Okay, thank you.
now let's go to item D, Hillcrest Conservation. So
All right, so 72,000 for the design, plus whatever it's gonna be to make it. And I understand if they have to use, why they're using the town people to do it. I think it's too much dough, so my answer is no.
Chris,
anybody?
is your mic off? It's just a little harder to understand you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
Thank you very
much. So my issue is the cost, Greg.
Gotcha. No, I got it all. I just, it was a little harder
Yeah,
that time.
no, I
Thank
didn't
you.
have the mic on properly, sorry.
Anybody want to comment, et cetera? Okay, can I get a motion either to recommend affirmative action or not to recommend affirmative action?
Recommend affirmative action on D.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Get a roll
Call the
call.
roll call till we have all three done.
I don't think so. I think that no, I don't think so.
Okay, go ahead.
Suresh, this is affirmative action on Article D.
Yeah, so no.
No. Peggy?
Yes.
Yes. Kathy?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
Lindsay?
Yes.
Dee? Yes. Parshar?
No.
Christine?
No.
Quasi? Lois?
You're on mute.
Okay, keep going.
Lois?
Let's go to Article 5, item 5.
That
I'm sorry, I
passes.
was on mute. I
That
voted no,
passes.
Dee.
Did you vote no? Yes or
I
no?
voted no.
No. All right, 7-4.
You've got a
It
report?
passes.
I understand.
Okay.
Okay. Item F, the
Item
Concord
F.
250 Permanent Committee,
So.
the trees.
Yeah, the trees. So it looks like they need 250. 125, they think is coming from some capital budget. I'm not sure where they think that's coming from. And 125 is from CPS, which is what they put in. I think, trees are nice. We do have plenty of trees in Concord. I don't see it as a memorial. I don't see it as something that's going to work for a memorial. I think, unfortunately, they don't have a lot of dough, and I think they figured out this was a way to figure out a way to get a memorial. I know they're looking for one, so it's clever. I applaud them for the thought process, but I don't think it's a good use of the funds. So I vote no.
Any other discussion? Can I get a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second?
This is Article
Oh.
F.
Oh, I'm sorry, Don, you had a question, comment?
Yeah, I had my hand up. Yeah, I wanted to say I agree with Chris that I didn't see how this would work as a memorial. I asked if they'd all be in one place, and the answer was no, they're all over town. So I think this is supplanting a town program, and and unless they put a plaque on every tree, I just don't see how it works. So
Trees too tend to die as well, but
Okay. Is there a second on affirmative action?
Second.
Okay. Article F. Suresh,
No.
Peggy,
Yes.
Kathy,
No.
Eric,
No.
Greg,
No.
Don,
no.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Dee, yes. Parshar,
I love trees, but no.
okay. Christine,
No.
Quasi, he's not here, sorry. Lois,
No.
okay, no's win. It's 3-5, 8. 8 of 3. So that's a no.
I think
That
I've
was the
got no.
project we received by far the most positive support for in letters to the committee. So we'll see.
We've been overruled, our feelings will not be hurt.
Anyone in this meeting heard when is the best time to plant a tree? 25 years ago. Second best time?
50 years ago.
Today.
Okay,
Okay, we have Article H,
H, right, so they want
outreach, for the
$45,000.
cemetery naming?
It's
Is
not-
that the one?
No, they want $45,000 for a bench and some signage related to the prison cemetery, so, and I think.
Isn't that Article H?
item
Yes,
H, it is.
That is
Article
it, right.
H.
That's what I'm talking about, right.
Okay.
Memorialize the 217 men buried in the Concord
Correct, that's
Reformatory
right.
Cemetery.
Yeah,
with a
that's right.
Sitting area.
And I think, let me just see on that one, that's the whole thing. So that's not a one that they have more to go, it's the whole thing. So to me, it's just too expensive for a bench and a place to sit down. I like benches, I like to sit down, I love the trail. I don't need a movie.
There's a commemorative plaque.
Oh, there's more than a plaque. There's a movie screen that's going to be interactive. It's quite a thing. So take a look at the detail of the $45,000. We could have a nice bench and a plaque for a lot less than $45,000. So I think it's not a good use of town funds, so my answer is no.
Is there a motion to be made?
Can you make a motion to say no? Do you want to do that or no?
can.
Go ahead.
Is there a
See
second?
if there, well, wait a minute, let her
I
make the
have to make the
motion.
motion. I move no action on item H of the CPC Article 40.
Can I get a second? I'll second it. Keep the
Okay,
ball going here.
here we go. All right,
Oh, sorry, discussion?
I just.
Under discussion.
Say something, is that?
Well, I think describing it as a bench and a plaque is a little trite, and there's a lot of the project that's in terms of cataloging the people that are buried there in coordination with the library, and I don't know, I'd encourage you to go and spend a contemplative moment there, there next to all those graves, especially around Veterans Day, with all the flags that they put out there for all the numbered unnamed graves. I think it's a pretty important project.
Okay, and I think they had 12,000 before this?
From CPC,
I think so. I think they had money beforehand. It was in the, it was part of a 50 grand that was given last year. So I think they had a subset of some piece before, so I think it's.
if it wasn't
it's close.
specific to that, they couldn't use it.
it's not a bench and a plaque, though.
No, I didn't say. I
That's how you
told-
described it.
No, I did not. Kathy did. I know it's
I
more
said
than
a
that.
pla- I said
She said that, I
Yeah, you
did
said a
not.
bench.
She said
a
a
nice
bench.
bench,
She
yeah.
said a bench,
Okay.
yes.
All right, roll call.
So if we vote yes, we're saying no?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, confirm.
Let's
Can you-
switch it up
or
at the
sorry,
end of the night.
confirm-
Keep it confusing.
So
Can
we'll
you
start
confirm
with
which way we're going
Suresh.
here?
Yeah,
Yes.
Greg wants us to.
You're
Oh, hold on,
saying
hold on, hold
yes,
on.
means
Greg
no.
has asked to
Hold on, Greg-
restate the
Greg, what are you
motion.
asking?
Can you restate the motion, right?
Yeah, restate the motion so I know which way we're going here.
So on item H of Article 40, which is the cemetery bench, is no action. So I'm recommending no action. That's my motion.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'm going to suggest that people say they want to fund it or not fund it, so it's going to be
That's fine.
easier than, okay?
Yeah.
That's fine.
Suresh, do you want to fund it or not fund it?
Fund it.
Fund it. Peggy?
Fund it.
Kathy?
Fund it.
Eric?
Fund it.
Greg?
Fund it.
Don?
Fund it.
Lindsay?
Fund it.
Dee? Fund it. Parashar?
Don't.
Okay. Christine?
Don't.
Quasi?
Not here.
Lois?
Waiting and waiting for him.
Lois? Sorry.
Okay.
What
Lois?
did you say,
Fund it.
Lois?
What? Yeah, fund it.
Fund it. Okay, it's funded. All right.
92.
Okay, what's next on our agenda? Thank you, Burton. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay,
Fund it.
what's next on
Okay.
our agenda?
So,
Our agenda. Do we have an agenda?
No, I think
Annie and Aaron
we've got
are-
correspondence. So,
Oh, all right.
He's supposed to do
It's,
solar?
No,
hold on
we're.
a minute.
skip
Any
that.
and
Oh,
all
skip it.
articles from the three
Skip it.
Finance Committee public hearings.
yeah,
Do we have anything?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Anything else that you would maybe want to discuss that you already took votes on the prior public hearings?
I don't think so. Is there anything? I'm looking around the room here.
I don't think so.
All right. So the next item is reorganization. So, let me,
Review and discuss, no, FY '25 Finance Committee report is B.
oh, sorry. So, Dee, do you want to take it away?
Sure. Are we all set for our Finance Committee report? Most of the writing is
Dee.
done. I have to talk
Dee,
into.
what is the actual date to the printer?
Hopefully, if I get the consent calendar Monday night or Tuesday morning, it would go to the printer on Tuesday.
I have a bunch of comments for you, and I have a question. There is, in the draft that you sent to just a couple of us to look at earlier today.
Yes,
There's no separate section dealing with the 5-year tax projection.
that is correct.
That is something we are required to do. Town meeting voted that we have to do that.
Thank you for that information. We will have to.
It's been in every report. It is a section we have to include. You don't have to make it as long as, or detailed as it was when Dean was writing it, but it is a significant omission to not have it.
It's a requirement. It can be written in a different way, or?
It should be a separate freestanding section. There was a town meeting vote, I forget how long ago it was. Chris, do you remember? But we are required to include a projection for the taxes for the next 5 years.
I was looking for it and I couldn't find it.
I can find it. It goes
It
back
did,
a
it's not in there.
The requirement is,
No, I was looking
You were
for the
looking for the
requirement,
requirement?
and I couldn't find it.
Oh, no, there is one.
there is a requirement? Okay, it doesn't specify exactly how it should look, is that
No.
correct? Okay, so I will talk with the CFO about that to see what we can do with that. I know that I had a discussion with Anthony about this, and because of the impending changes that are going to be happening in the next few years in the town in terms of new apartment structures coming online, et cetera, it seemed as though there was a level of uncertainty that if we did make projections, they might not be accurate. Anthony, did you want to expound on that?
Yeah, I think we were having, thank you. I think we were having a discussion about that. The concern was it was giving people a false idea because it really didn't take into consideration the reval years and so forth. So, we can do it, but it's not going to be 100% accurate.
So I think they never are.
They never are, and so you make
Projections
sure
are
you tell
never
people the
100%
assumptions.
accurate. But this is something the town meeting required us to do. It's part of our town committee charge, and in past reports, in the introductory materials, listing what and I don't have the finance committee report with me, I'm not at home, in the introductory materials of the report, when we list what our responsibilities are, one of the responsibilities we always listed was the responsibility to make a 5-year projection. And it's not there.
Okay.
We can do it.
Yeah, I'll go back and
Okay.
include it. Thank you, Lois, for that.
And I have some other suggestions for you and Anthony that I'll put together and email out, hopefully as early as possible tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, and I also, and this isn't something that we can fix right now, but this is a year when the town is particularly concerned. When town citizens, we hear it, are particularly concerned about rising real estate taxes. And one of the changes in the format of the report is that there's no longer a deep dive section.
That's correct.
There's no and I just want to raise a concern about that. I think that particularly for the large dollar items, I think it was useful to give people the option of reading more detail, even if they skipped over it, which I am absolutely confident the majority of the people who got the report did. Anyway, that I don't think, there's no time to have a discussion about that now and talk about putting that in. Just, we don't have enough hours between now and the time it has to go to the printer. But the 5-year projections thing is just an obligation that was placed on us by town meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So, Dee, what I'll do is I'll just take a few minutes just to go over my cover letter very quickly, because I think it might address some of the points, and you'll see this. I think generally what I try to do here is kind of reflect the urgency of, I think, what we've heard over the last year or so, right? Again, at a very high level, without getting into a lot of stats, Dee and Liz and Anthony sat down, our spending increase has been 4.8% per year the last 5 years, but our non-property tax revenue has only increased 2.4. So the majority of the burden has really fallen on residents, because 93% of our tax base is from residential property. Just kind of think about that for a minute. The next sort of point that we're making is our expenses are expected to go 3.78, but again, non-property tax revenue only 3.12. And so, in essence, and we've got a question for you guys about the 5-year projection on median tax bill, 12.5% over 5 years, right? And then basically pointing out to folks that these numbers do not include 75 million plus for Walden Street, right, Public Works, et cetera. Doesn't include the road maintenance spending we're about to do. Doesn't include any of the investments that might be necessary for 229, right? And oh, by the way, MCI is not coming for free probably. There's probably gonna be some investment on the town's part to bring that up to snuff and make it a viable property. So those numbers that we just talked about are a huge underestimate, and so what we're really doing is urging the town manager and the select board, strategic planning, we've talked about this, we talked about it tonight. The school and the superintendent, strategies to moderate the spending growth, improving outcomes, and then really it's up to us to make difficult choices as Concordians, right? What are we gonna spend money on? What are we not gonna spend? Are we gonna spend money on the little things as well as the big things? If so, we need to figure out what level of property tax increases per year are we comfortable with? Is it 4%, 5%, 7%? So that's basically the highlights, 2 pages, but just wanted to, hopefully sends a sobering message to folks, because that's what we're up against.
Thank you for making those additions.
Right. So, anything else on the report?
Don has his hand up.
Somebody has.
Oh, Don, go ahead.
Yeah, I wonder if you want to make mention of the off-budget increases, the enterprise fund for stormwater and the 50 million for freshwater, because while these are outside of taxes, they are direct costs on Concordians.
Don, those can go in your write-ups?
But Don, if you could
Correct, but I
send,
just meant in Parashar's.
yeah, can you send me 2 sentences on that and we'll add them in?
Yeah.
Thank you, perfect, very good. Because that'll just add to the cost of living in Concord, basically, is what it's gonna do. Okay,
Well, on that note, and I'm happy to help, Dawn, the fees as well, the trash, that's going way up. The other fees they outlined, that may be worth including
yeah,
too.
just maybe, I don't wanna get into 200 here and 1,000 there, but
Yeah.
just whatever 2 sentences you have, the 50 million is a big number.
Yeah.
And-
Send me a sentence.
And we should not be hung up on 50 million, to be fair to them, because they don't know what it's gonna be, but it is millions of dollars. Everybody will acknowledge that, I think. So Don, if you can send a sentence or 2, we'll just add it to the cover note, okay? Anything
Will
else?
do. I'll try to keep it brief.
Yep. Anything else?
No, I really don't have anything else.
So let me go to the reorg. And so basically talking to a few folks here and there, and sort of the natural progression, if you will, as people move up through the ranks. What I'd like to do today is propose a slate for next year. So I think you guys know Chris and I are off the committee. Amrith is also declining to serve out his term. He's gotten too busy. So you guys are gonna have 3 new folks starting at town meeting. They will have been sworn in. They won't be members then, but once town meeting ends, Chris and I will probably go have a drink somewhere. And the rest of you guys can soldier on.
What is the timing, in past years, when was the timing that we did this? Was it before we ended?
Yes,
Or
absolutely.
after the new people came on?
No, it's
It was always before?
Basically.
Okay, okay.
And so I'm gonna pull up the slate and happy to have a discussion. I did forget to send a note to Carmen,
Yeah, you should do that.
but I think she'll be okay with this. So let me pull that up. And for those of you at home, can you guys see this? So you've got the members from next year listed up here. Mr. Dahlberg here to my left has graciously agreed to be chair. Actually, he hasn't agreed to it. We raised his hand. We're just gonna have to vote him in. But then Don has agreed to be the clerk, with Lindsay serving as the clerk for the Guidelines Committee. Carlin did agree, by the way, to be vice clerk, so I should probably take that off and make that a green. Quasi agreed to be vice chair of the Guidelines Committee. And Lois is going to be the vice chair of the committee. That's who I'm recommending based on
Vice clerk is done.
one,
Who's clerk?
Clerk
Oh, that's
is
this year.
done.
Oh, next year. I've got the wrong column.
yeah,
Thank
yeah,
God.
yeah, yeah. I'll send this to you so you don't have to
Okay,
go
all right.
through it again. So let me see if, give people,
Did you just say Quasi, though, teaches? Is he
it's going to end in May, so he'll be good with all this.
permanently? So he's going to be available?
He's available, yeah.
Okay. So Quasi's going to be vice chair and
Well, this is
Carlin
who I'm
is,
proposing
No.
and recommending. We have to
Carlin
vote
is
on it.
vice clerk.
Yes.
And Lois is also vice chair?
She's vice chair of the whole committee.
Quasi's vice chair of guidelines.
Oh, guidelines, got it, okay.
Lois is vice
Okay.
chair
You
of the
didn't
committee.
mention,
So,
you didn't mention Lindsay, but it's up on the screen.
I did, I thought I said
Oh,
Lindsay.
she's there.
Yeah.
I thought I
Lindsay's
said Lin-
chair.
You didn't mention
of
Lindsay's gonna be
guidelines.
chair of Guidelines Committee. Lindsay and Quasi will tag team, right? And you've got Eric and Lois chairing and vice chairing the whole committee. And then you've got Don and Carlin are gonna be the clerks.
Excellent.
Got it. Yeah.
That's what I'm proposing. Now we have to, I need a motion on this.
Yep.
And then I need a second, and the current clerk has to, or maybe Don should practice.
That's okay.
I don't know what to do. I don't have a book. I'm
Yeah.
total, no. I think Dee needs to do this.
I make a motion to approve the 2024, 2025 slate of
Officers.
officers for the Finance Committee.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Okay.
Roll call, and then you're going to send me this list.
Yeah.
Okay? Okay. Suresh,
Aye.
Peggy,
Aye.
Kathy,
Aye.
Eric,
Aye.
Greg,
Aye.
Don,
Aye.
Lindsay,
Aye.
Dee, yes, Parashar,
Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
Lois.
Yes.
Okay. Unanimous.
Quasi.
Unanimous. Quasi.
Quasi's not here.
He's not here.
He got
Oh, she
voted
fell
in.
for it, though.
Yeah, well, Quasi's not here. He should have to become chair. Because the person who is not here should get the worst job.
All right, so that's done.
Okay, so that is done. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Good luck to all of you.
Yes, good luck.
We'll be watching, I'll be watching.
Well, you still have one more meeting, right?
I have
We
one
have
more.
town meeting.
At town meeting.
Town
Town
meeting.
meeting.
Town meeting.
Unless you want,
It is-
sometimes
that's
things
the
come
end
up
of it?
before then.
Town meeting is
After
Yeah.
post-town meeting.
Yeah.
I would like to thank.
We have a March
I
meeting.
would like to thank Parashar
April meeting, we have an April meeting.
for your year as chair. I think
Thank you, I appreciate that, but we still have one more, thank you. It's been a great committee, you guys have been good on all this stuff. Correspondence, can we share?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
That's
sorry?
the correspondence, I go ahead.
Yes,
Okay.
Yes, yes, yeah.
from concerned citizens
About town budget, right?
about town budget. So we should at least go through it. I mean, I read it and I wasn't quite sure what
I
they
think
were
Mr.
trying to.
McCone is on the call.
I'm sorry?
He's on.
I think
Paul's
Mr.
on the line.
McCone is
Yeah,
on
okay,
the
well,
call.
let's bring him up.
Parashar?
Yeah.
I just want to point out, my calendar says we have a regular FinCom meeting on the 25th.
Of April,
That's- Yes, the
If
Thursday
necessary.
before town meeting. That's only if necessary.
yes.
Okay.
Oh, that's only if necessary.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I had it too.
Yeah, it's there as a placeholder. Leave it there as a placeholder. Whatever,
Because
something comes up, we'll have to meet. If worst comes to worst, we'll also be meeting at town meeting. No, at town well, the whole,
Oh, we can have a meeting at town meeting, yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
We'll-
In
we'll-
those cases, you're still the leadership.
Yes.
Yes.
And, so the town meeting starts at 7, but do you want us there to
Post
have
at
a
6.
meeting?
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Okay.
So, let's see. Paul, are you on the line? have you been elevated?
He has to accept the
Oh, okay.
invitation to be.
So, let's keep going. So Paul, is it Mac?
he's on.
McCone? Has sent us, sorry?
Is Paul's
online?
last name?
Elevated.
Paul, are you online? You might be muted.
Okay.
I am sorry, with this new webinar, I'm having trouble looking for.
Yeah, so, can you just share your thoughts in 5 to 10 minutes? The committee received your correspondence. As I was reading it, I wasn't 100% sure kind of whether it was a request or just information at us.
It's more information. I think there's some, I don't think, I know there's some negative thoughts or review about not having a budget book. And there is a group of us that have put together, this is, as it just states in this, says, thank you for your consideration. It's just what a group of us think where it stands now with respect to the information that we've been given, not having a budget book. And I think it's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, so,
If anybody has any, particular questions, the PowerPoint is it's more of a statement,
yeah,
if you will, than it is a direct. You need to change this and that. It's a reflection, and it's an analysis of what we have seen and perceived so far, and are certainly appreciate the consideration and anybody that has any comments as to what we've submitted.
yeah. So let me just say a few things, Paul. So first of all, I think it was regretful that we didn't have a budget book put out. Anthony's talked about some of the challenges of switching over the enterprise reporting system, et cetera. I am sure and reasonably confident that the budget books will be put out, as they have been in the past, moving forward. So that's sort of one point. I think the other thing I got out of this is, even though the budget books weren't out there, the town has been pretty forthcoming over the last 3 or 4 months in their budget presentations, conversations with us around what the fiscal year 25 budget priorities are, et cetera. So I appreciate the fact that the budget book wasn't out there, but there was a lot of information out there that the committee considered, both as we set the guidelines, but also as we reviewed the budgets when Carrie and Anthony came in December, once they had a proposed budget, et cetera. So and certainly appreciate the viewpoints that you've shared and want to thank you for that. But, so those are my sort of overarching thoughts. And I'm going to just look around the room and see if any other members of the Finance Committee would want to share some thoughts.
I mean, I think, Paul, one of the points on your chart was around the split between, or how much is in the reserve fund for the salary adjustments, I guess, for FY '25. FinCom, we really look at the budget in total. Certain salaries a big driver of that, but, I think we've had good conversations with the town manager and with the CFO around their process there, and I think there is some concern that it's tight. So I think we agree with you on that. We suspect it is tight, and but they're still going through the process. And I think part of what we did tonight, where we hopefully kept some money in free cash, perhaps gives them a little more wiggle room, to deal with not just salary adjustments, but other things that come up. But so I hear you. I get it.
Yeah, and I'd just like to say, pardon me, that this wasn't directed at. It was more informational as to what we were perceiving, and appreciate actually what the FinCom has done and said and produced. I think there's a slight bit more trepidation with where we see the monies with regard to the upcoming union negotiations and in the past. We're kind of the historical people, if you will, looking at, in the past, the salary reserve fund was just that. It was for everybody. And now there seems to be, there's some question whether they're in budgets or not in budgets. It's very confusing. And that's one of the questions that we pointed out.
Have you shared your questions and comments and thoughts with the town manager?
No, that's what this is about.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I would recommend having a direct conversation with them, giving them your input and thoughts.
Point received, as we used to say in police work. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Paul, appreciate it. I don't see any other members of FinCom asking questions. Dee, we want to go through the minutes?
You had one other.
We have
Another
one,
letter.
we have another letter, the
we did?
Don letter
Sandy Smith.
about Sandy
regarding-
Smith about.
Oh, yeah, the
stormwater.
stormwater.
Yeah.
So Don, is Sandy on? Sandy's probably not on.
No,
I don't think so.
But Don, I think he was picking up on the point you made, and again, it goes back to we can always revisit articles and past votes. So is this something we want to do?
I have a question. So I guess, as we talked about at the last meeting, my opinion doesn't really change in terms of, I see the need, I see the reason why they're using a separate process to source funding. I get that. I also hear the concern about having it really be essentially, it's like a tax, right? It's very different from electric or water. And one question I would have, and the bylaws are actually also being proposed with this article. So it's not just let's have the enterprise fund. It actually has a set of bylaws which you can read through. It was in their materials from our hearing. And it doesn't say anything in there about who has oversight other than the Public Works Commission,
Yeah.
PWC, I think is the acronym. So if we wanted to, I assume we could ask, or we could simply say as a FinCom that, you can be a separate group, but guess what? We're going to include discussion of those rates and essentially that tax in our conversations, right? There's nothing that prohibits us from doing that, from having some.
Do we get every year, take a look at it?
Well, that was one of my questions, is I assume because it's an enterprise fund, like other enterprise funds, its budget will come before annual town meeting every year. So I think FinCom will have a good chance to weigh in, and we could certainly, in our process, be looking at what's the hit from regular tax increase, plus what's the hit from this, which is essentially a tax increase. It's not based on usage, right? It's essentially, so we could change our process to make sure there is oversight of it. That would be for a future committee, not this one, but, because it won't actually hit until, 26. They'll start talking about it in 25, but it'll take a couple years to actually get this thing going.
2 years.
But I don't think FinCom is out of the loop if we don't want to be. I think we can choose to be in. If you want something formal in the bylaw, you could ask for that adjustment, but I don't think that's a bad idea, and I think that was maybe what Don was getting to, but I'll.
Yeah, no, and actually, I would actually go one step further. Just think of it as another budget entity, because unlike regular customers, right, rate-paying customers, this is more for everybody.
Yeah, and it's
And so
commercial
maybe
properties too.
there are guidelines set, maybe separately,
Maybe.
but set guideline for this.
They could be.
The schools and the towns, and just make it a regular budget entity.
Right.
And then have them come in, August, September, and give us a sense of what it's looking, whatever the timeline has to
Yeah,
be.
right.
And frankly, if they've got to adjust their schedule to set rates, so be it. Because otherwise,
I think it's worth.
there's no way of knowing what
Yeah.
the total hit is.
I think
So,
that's a good idea.
Don and Lois?
Yeah, so I would say, Chris, if what you just said was true, then we would have been able to do that. We would have, but Parashar asked that question, can we understand what does it cost to be a taxpayer, or a citizen here in Concord? And we can't get that answer yet. We haven't seen it yet. And I don't know that this is adding clarity. I think it's moving it away from clarity. I think that it's taking this spending out of the guidelines. And your point is, well, maybe we could create a guideline for it. Well, let me ask you this. So yes, I agree, it's a required service. It's something the town has to provide. But so are all the other things that are in the budget today. Is this, and I know I raised this before, and I think Carrie said, well, there's a limit to how many things you can have. Some things can be enterprise funds, others can't. But I don't want to see us set a precedent where we have an enterprise fund for the fire department, an enterprise fund for the library. And it's easy to go down that path because all of these things are critical and important. And so if this is true, then what else is true? And what else is true in this case is everything else would qualify as well. Sandy made an excellent point, I thought, that enterprise funds are used when there is income associated with it. So for the light plant, they have income. Beatty Center has income. In this case, there is no associated income. This is a true town expense. And I think if we aren't funding it, well, we need to, but taking it out of the budget is not the way I'd like us to see us be responsible adults here.
Lois?
Well, first of all, Don, I think there kind of is income here because we don't know what the rate structure is going to be, but we talked about this a little bit at the hearing. There's a lot of impermeable surface that's commercially owned, and those people are going to have to pay, and they're not paying anything now. So yeah, citizens will be paying something, but I think there'll be some revenue realized that would otherwise be lost to address an issue that affects the whole town. So I don't completely agree with you. I haven't personally researched the state law on what can and can't be an enterprise fund. And that would have been probably a useful thing to do. But Carrie did speak to that at our hearing and point out that this isn't, I don't think this is quite the slippery slope that you're afraid that it is. And a lot of the groups that you're talking about, the firemen, the police, a lot of those kind of services are delivered by union workers, and they already have contracts with the town. So I really don't see this in that light. I voted for it after the hearing because I thought it made sense, and I still think that it makes sense. And remember, it's not escaping regulation. Chris made the excellent point that in the same way the Finance Committee reviews the budgets of the enterprise funds, and in the same way that budgets have to be approved at town meeting for the other enterprise funds, this new entity will be part of that structure. And there will be a rate-setting body that is part of town government. So it's not privatizing this function, or it's not the town abandoning its role in supervising this function. So I guess I think these are interesting points to discuss, and I think we should be aware of the larger context in which we're making these decisions, but I haven't heard anything yet that changed my mind.
Well, a quick question then for you, Lois, is taking those excellent points in mind, could you not apply those same points to any other town service and simply apply a fee to it and now call it income? So this is a town, service that we're now going to charge a fee for and say, well, now it's an enterprise fund because it has an income because we created a fee. We could do that for fire protection, for police protection. We could do it for a lot of things. And I bring that up because I have seen that happen. And it happened in California where I lived as a way of getting around what in Massachusetts, the Proposition 2.5, and every year the budget became 16 budgets, and I don't think that it's a responsible path. I think if we say as a finance committee that we're going to take all these, well, we can't take energy consumption, we can't take the light plant into consideration because that's true consumption. I think the existing enterprise funds are true consumption. This one is different. This one was allocating the cost by how many square feet of pavement you have is not true consumption, and a variable consumption, something that the user can control, so, or opt in or out of. So I think this is a case that feels fundamentally different to me. It feels like a fundamental town service. And I say, well, if we can use this justification for this in this case, could we not use it for other cases as well? I think the answer is yes, we could. And if that becomes the solution to Prop 2.5, that's something we should discuss and say, yeah, this is the route we want to take to get around the budget limitations here.
I think we can't have this discussion
Lois.
because we don't understand the full legal context, Tom. And I think that your speculation that this can go the same route as you've seen it go in California, I understand why that's raising concerns for you, but we don't know that. What we've been advised by our town manager, that the legal structure in Massachusetts is different, and then you can't outsource certain functions like that. I just don't agree with you.
Peggy, did you have something to say?
No.
Anybody else?
Yeah. Don, keep in mind that this is a 2-year process. During this first year, we are just establishing a fund. For the second year, it will provide all the detail. So I think once this fund is approved, what you may want to do is start talking with the correct people to have the Finance Committee more involved in how they're going to structure the funding and how they're going to obtain any other, any other funding sources that they have to.
Okay,
All right?
but
It's not, there's nothing about the cost, there's nothing about money in this first year. It comes about in the second year when they establish it.
It just feels to me like it should be a deliberate direction that we're taking as a town, because this is, and Lois, you mentioned outsourcing, and I wasn't aware this is outsourcing of this function. I thought it's still being done by the town.
It is being done by the town.
Yeah, so that confused me. And you said we couldn't do it with police and fire because they have union contracts, and I don't understand how that is. So I'm missing something important
Well,
there.
so here's what I would recommend, Don, because Carrie did tell us that state statute limits what type of activity can be called an enterprise fund, number one. So if you feel that that may either not be true or there may be loopholes, I would recommend you either talk to her or someone else and do a little bit of research, because otherwise we're going to go round and round, and it's 9:30. So what I'd like to do is ask a question of anybody. A, does anybody want to revisit our vote on this particular article tonight? That's sort of question number one. And Don, if you feel strongly enough, which, completely encourage you to do, if you'd want to come back to the committee and share some additional information that might cause us to revisit, we can always do it at we can have an April conversation or at town meeting. Because I think it's important enough, we shouldn't just sort of wave it away. I'm with you,
Fine,
Don. Let me finish, Kathy. I'm with you in spirit of, hey, this is one large set of expenditures and frankly revenue, whether you call it a tax or a fee, that comes outside of any process and makes it more challenging for folks to understand the true cost.
But before we just come back with more information, shouldn't we have somebody research the legal?
Well, that's what I asked him to do, right? Talk to Carrie. Carrie told us legally what's possible and not possible in Massachusetts.
I would hope CPW has done that.
I think that they are in the
Again,
process of doing
if Don is,
Yeah, what I'm inclined to do, Parashar, on that vein, is to find out what are the all functions that are eligible to be broken out of the budget and handled in this fashion, and then come back to FinCom and ask for a vote on which of these we feel should be handled separately, and see if in fact this is a one-off, or if we would like to see other town functions. I doubt that if anyone came to us last year, we would have voted to do this. We would have said, yeah, that should be separate outside of the oversight of the town manager's budget and not subject to FinCom guidelines. I really doubt we would have said that, but we voted to do it this year on this one. And I want to make sure that we're doing it with our eyes open and know that if this is true, what else is true, so that we can get to, have a kind of a tiller or compass for these discussions in the future. So I'll take that action item.
Perfect.
I just have a different question, and I understand your point, Don, and I get it. But my question is a little different. And so when I started looking at the fact that there was a bylaw, and I actually watched the PWC meeting where they talked about preparing the bylaw and getting ready for town meeting, and they're still in the process of doing that. I really wonder whether there's been enough conversation in town around this. And so I think this is going to be controversial at town meeting. I think if people start to understand it, they're going to say, wait a minute, I don't know about this.
It might be.
Because
No one pays attention
until you get there and they say, oh, it's going to be 250 more. I think people will have a lot of questions about it, not necessarily the same ones we're discussing here, but I wonder whether they've done enough work yet on this. So one of the things that they have in the bylaw, which I didn't even focus on, didn't even ask about, is that every property is going to get charged. Yes. Every property, no exemption for town stuff, everybody's getting charged. And there was quite a debate within the committee, and other towns have done that differently as to what, so in other words, you're gonna feel it's gonna get charged to the schools, and that'll be in their budget. Okay, so now we're gonna see a budget increase in the school, the whole thing, right? It's gonna
hit the nonprofits, which are hard to get at.
That's right. So I think there's gonna be a lot of discussion around this, and I don't think there has been so far. I mean, we didn't have any discussion until they came to us. I don't know what other committees in town they've been to, but I sort of wonder whether this is cooked or not, because oftentimes Concord has a lot of deliberation about things, and I don't get the sense this one's been through the ringer yet. So I don't know what's going to happen.
So actually, this raises a good point. When you said not-for-profits, are you talking about like Concord Academy and the schools and stuff? Not public schools.
Hospital is going to.
So the question is, are they exempt from fees, but are they exempt from? They're not exempt from fees, but they're exempt from property tax.
Well, I don't know if we have all the answers to those questions.
That's probably not a bad thing.
It's fair.
Water, sewer, electric.
They contribute to the runoff.
No, I agree. No, that's probably not a bad thing. That's a plus in my opinion.
Parsha,
I'm going to.
Hold on, Lois. Peggy speaking.
Yeah.
When we put a surtax on electric to funnel into rate savings, that affects our nonprofits. It's the same.
Yeah.
We have a sewer
But their rates, that's why.
It's the same idea.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, right.
Presumably, it's not removed. I completely agree. I agree with Dawn, to be honest, but I wasn't at the hearing, so it's really not fair to jump in at this point. And I also agree with Chris. I think no one's paying attention. When this comes to town meeting, it's going to blow.
I think so.
Lois, I'm going to have you have the last word unless anyone is dying for more words.
I did some quick research on my iPad while we were arguing about this. I have some materials I'll share with Don to help his research.
Good.
But basically, the services for which a community can adopt an enterprise fund are limited to public utilities, cable television, healthcare, recreation, and transportation.
Okay.
That's what's listed. It doesn't include cops. It doesn't include the fire department. That's what's listed in Massachusetts law. I'll share that with you, Don.
So it would be great if you guys could align.
Listening to the concerns, there's a lot of questions about how this is going to work, but I don't think the issue that the town is going to start spinning off all of the essential functions into separate ways of collecting money from the taxpayers, I don't see that as a real issue. But I do think there are real issues around this that will be aired. Yeah. And I think Dee's point is excellent, that we have 2 years to figure it out.
Yep. So I will ask you and Don to align on the facts. And then I think that it is worth talking again, whether we do it at town meeting or in April, because it is a lot of money. So that's going to be outside the tax rate at a minimum, which will cause even more confusion for folks, frankly. And then some way for the finance committee to maybe say, you know what, there's a budget entity. We're going to set guidelines just like we do for everybody else.
We voted affirmative action. Do we want to
We-
change to RTM?
We did, and I
Recommendation
don't know, I'm willing to take a motion on it. I didn't hear anybody.
All we took a motion on is that they establish the fund. Has nothing to
But I
do
understand
with
that.
any details associated of how the fund
I
will
understand. I think
operate.
Peggy was just asking what the motion was, and I just said that's what
town.
we, yeah.
Affirmative action was, okay.
So if we want to go back on it, we can, but I don't hear that as a groundswell right now. So, okay. I think we did our day's work today.
We have minutes?
Minutes.
Oh,
Minutes,
we're not
the
done.
minutes available are
Easy,
the
it's
minutes
easy,
of
they're
March
fine.
19th.
They look good.
One page.
One page.
I know, don't you love that?
was very nice.
Don't you love that? Is
Good,
there?
they're very easy.
Any other corrections or no corrections?
No
No
corrections.
corrections.
All right, so
Although,
we
to
have
be
to,
technical,
I
we
have to
did
do
it
a
in one
roll
vote.
call.
I'll make a motion to approve them.
Thank you, Suresh.
Second.
Great, a lot of seconds on that one. Suresh,
Aye.
Peggy,
Abstain.
Kath, you're abstaining?
I was not
It
there.
wasn't around.
Okay.
Oh, the
Kathy,
19th, I might have been. I wasn't.
Eric,
Yes.
Greg,
Aye.
John,
No, you were.
Yes.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Dee, yes. Parshar.
Yes.
Christine.
Yes.
Lois.
Yes.
Thank you. Unanimous. The ones on the 21st will be at our next meeting, which may or may not take place this year, but they will be done.
Yep. Adjourn the meeting. We need a
So
motion.
we need a motion to adjourn. Jeez, we need a motion to adjourn. Lindsay, you make that motion, right? Didn't you make that?
I'll move it. I'll-
They
Second.
drop off, we can just go.
Okay, Suresh.
Aye.
Peggy. Kathy, we don't have to vote on it?
No, you
No,
don't.
all right.
The chair can adjourn us.
Even with hybrid?
Yes.
Oh, well, then I-
Meeting adjourned.
Okay, meeting adjourned.
Chair.
Now you know.
Bye, everyone.